But then it started to get more and more intense to where he would start to have visions when he was in the hypnagogic state, or the state like right before you fall asleep or right after you wake up. But then they began to spill more and more over into his waking life. And he records all this, and it culminates in a meeting with Jesus. From there, he begins to have experiences, what he calls in the state of full wakefulness, and have them all the time. As in, when he would just be going about his day, he would be able to see his office around him and be writing and things, but he can also see and hear spirits around him. Very much was having like full-blown panoramic spiritual experiences, but also sometimes having sort of augmented reality, where he would be at a party in the regular world and talking with people, but he'd also be aware of what spirits were saying and commenting on as that went by.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
Hey guys, do you know what a word from God is? An on-time Rhema word. The Logos turns into the Rhema. It's an on-time. It is God speaking to you where you are right now. That's what this show was for me. For me. And I know that if you resonate with my work, if you resonate with my podcast, it will be for you too. I'm gonna let you know, my mind was blown from this episode. I found out that many of the things that I've been praying about, my thoughts and my studies and my encounters with God and my encounters in the spirit world, like, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. I'm tapping into revelation through divine encounter with the Lord and Him teaching it through the scriptures. I'm finding stuff in the Bible that's blowing my mind. And I feel like I'm the only one because I've never heard it. I've never heard it articulated. But today, hearing about the stories and the journey of Emanuel Swedenborg, my goodness, I am encouraged. And it opened up even more awe and wonder. And I still have even more questions, but man, there was somebody who existed who experienced a lot of this and articulated it and shared something really beautiful. And that's what this discussion was about today. I know that you'll be blessed. I know that you'll want more. Listen, stay to the end. It was good the whole way. I was at the edge of my seat asking genuine questions because I wanted to know. I wanted to know. And I know if you're listening to this, you want to know too. There were some gems in this episode. Many blessings, guys. Check it out. Today, we welcome my guest, Curtis Childs. Curtis, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, my friend. How are you?
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to be talking about somebody today that's really near and dear to your heart and very intriguing person. I'm not an expert on him. He's recently come into my life. His books have been popping up, so I know very little, but I'm very intrigued. So a lot of these questions that I'm going to ask you in some of the conversation, I'm a student and I really want to know more about his life and his work and some of the things he's experienced and come up with. But today we're going to be talking about Emanuel Swedenborg. And so what does he mean to you and how did you get into his work?
Yeah, so Swedenborg is important to me because it was through Swedenborg's writings that I really got to know God. And not only that, but that's been where I've consistently been able to find God, is in what he wrote there. That's where I've come to my understanding of God, my connection with God. And you really can't separate Swedenborg's writings from the Bible because most of his writings are about the Bible. So it's one and the same, but it's a lens through which I approach the Bible. So really that's been where I find my comfort. And when I'm been struggling with the things that I've struggled with in my life, that's where I've turned to, the concepts, the ideas in there, the description of what God is like and how God really runs our lives and, what the point of life is. Everything that I've needed has been there. So I love telling people about Swedenborg because he's not well known, but I just haven't found any better gateway into knowing who God is.
That's awesome.
and feeling that presence. And so I've been around Swedenborg's writings since I was little. My parents were readers of his. The church that I went to, was incorporated Swedenborg into their sermons and things. But it wasn't. You can grow up around something, but that doesn't mean it's real to you.
Oh yeah.
It really came alive for me when I started to I had like a depressive episode where I got really had a ton of, I didn't know what to call it at the time, because I was just like 18 and I was like, well, what's going on? Like my mind is going crazy. And I had all these like anxious thoughts and fears, and everything was really confusing. It just all sort of hit me at once. And it was in the beginning of that, I was just trying to like keep my head above water. But as I started to get a bit of a grip, I was looking around for answers, and I knew about Swedenborg, but that was when I really started to look at it and see through it. Oh, this is real. Like this is really telling me about God. And that's something that's just as real as like this desk in front of me. Like that God is really there. So that was when I really started to make it my own, right? I'd had it around, but that's when it became not something that I knew I was supposed to probably be interested in, but something that I was really interested in, because it was medicine for me. It was giving me life. So
wow, that's amazing that his work means that much to you, and it's been an inspiration and an encouragement. So what is your duty now to spread his message and to articulate some of the things that he believes and he wrote about, and how do you do that? Are you part of the Swedenborg Foundation and those things? Or are you just taking this up on your own? Can you talk a little bit about what you do now with his work?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to do is, like, I think about the help that I got from his work. And whenever somebody's really been helped by something, you want to share that with people because you feel this obligation. It's like if everyone was thirsty and you found some water, you just feel like, I've got to tell people about this. They've got to know about it. And I've seen on your channel, I mean, you talked about, I watched a video where you were talking about your experience with hell and being under attack, and then the power that you found in Christ, Jesus to help you with that. Right. And so I'm guessing that's part of why you're here on YouTube
for sure
doing this, right? Is because when you get into a place where you need help and you're just like, come on, God, can you just help me out? And then you get it, you have this sense of gratitude and this sense of like, wow, I don't want anyone to be where I was and not know how to get out of there.
Yeah, man.
So to me, I feel like I know that not everybody's gonna find in Swedenborg's writings what I found, but I want to make sure everyone knows it's there, so that if it's what works for you, if that's how God is going to reach out to you, then I want to keep that open. So yeah, I'm working with the Swedenborg Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization. It's actually like 170 years old. Swedenborg was writing in 1700s. So this has been around for a long time, but it's actually, I would say actually now really that a lot of what he wrote seems current now. So, but Swedenborg Foundation has been there. It's a not-for-profit. So we take Swedenborg's books. They were written in Latin originally. That was the language of the educated. So Swedenborg, and so think of who's like the most famous scientist today. I think of like a Neil deGrasse Tyson. Maybe you know him.
Celebrity,
so imagine if Neil deGrasse Tyson one day, because he makes all these shows, right? You see him on Discovery Channel and stuff talking about how the universe formed. Yeah. Imagine that he one day posted something that said, hey, I had this experience. I met Jesus Christ, and now I can see the afterlife, and I'm not going to do movies and stuff about science anymore. I'm going to do them about God and life after death and the Bible and its inner meaning. That was like what happened with Swedenborg. He was a really successful, he was a scientist, one of the leading scientists in a lot of fields. Back then, science wasn't like as complicated as it is now. So you could actually be really good at a couple different branches of it. And he was like renowned as not only a scientist, but he was an inventor. He was big in Swedenborg's mining industry, in Sweden's mining industry. At the time, Sweden was this world power, and the mining industry was a major industry for them. So he was doing all this inventing for that and running things. He was in the government. He was doing great. But he had this encounter. He had this spiritual crisis, and then this encounter with God. And from then on, he had this new mission where I'm gonna publish this set of. He ended up writing like 30 books, which were there's a deep treatment of the Bible and how to best see Jesus in every part of the Bible. And then he had this description of life after death, because he began having constant spiritual experiences. Now what you'd maybe call a near-death experience, where people will describe, I saw this tunnel and I went and I met Jesus, or I met angels, or I met a being of light, whatever people find there. And then they talk about a little glimpse they got of the afterlife and heaven and hell and everything. Swedenborg was doing that according to his reports, right? I wasn't there, but this is what he's writing. Doing that every day for like 30 years. And so he would report to people. He wrote down in great detail, this is what heaven and hell are like, and this is what God is like, and this is how life is designed to be. This is the order we're meant to live in. And that was what he spent the rest of his life doing. And all the scientists thought he went crazy. People made fun of him, right? And the church at the time was a little bit threatened by it, because they felt like this is not the party line. This is not what we're saying. Now he's saying a lot of things that are popular in Christianity now, but at the time, it was a theocratic state, and you could go to jail for writing something that didn't match up with that. So but that didn't matter to him. He felt like this is what Jesus has told me to do, so I'm going to do it. And so he took his scientific understanding and his scientific mind and the way that he approached all of his studies in anatomy and philosophy and everything before, and applied that to writing out theology. And to me, I it's really hard to get into. It can be dense, and it can be confusing, and it can be weird, and it can be boring. But once you dig in there and give it a chance, I just think you meet the Lord in there, and that's what it's done for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing of being able to see Him in everything, in all things. It's like, if He is in all creation, and for Him, by Him, and through Him was all things made, you should be able to look at something and be able to see Him, see Christ, or see God in it, and that's a great mystery. And it is a beautiful journey. And most of the mystics, the people who enter into this type of contemplation, looking for God, where are you at in your prayer life? God, where are you at in this situation? And you usually, the universe is set up in such a way that you find what you're looking for. So to know people's story like Emanuel Swedenborg and many of the saints, even, I'm just now becoming enamored with many of the saints and what they carried and how their mind worked and how their spiritual practices were. Even today, you find it seems heretical or to some degree to encounter angels, or to talk to angels, or to go to hell and come back and live. And, we wade through a lot of different stuff, a lot of different stories, and a lot of different great storytellers. And I know Swedenborg was accused of even that these were just, poems and philosophy and just made up stories with a deeper meaning or something like that. Can you talk a little bit, more about people who would say, again, like he was insane, or just say, yeah, he was just writing poems and you guys took this stuff literal or something?
Yes. All the criticisms people might have of Swedenborg today, they had those in his day as well. And it was from all sides. Yeah, he had people right away who really got what he was writing and loved it, but not a bunch. He wasn't like a rock star theologian. He definitely took a hit on his popularity, going from being a successful scientist and inventor to this. So yeah, so some people you just had making fun of the idea that you can see spirits and angels and anything like that. There was, I think it was Immanuel Kant, who was this intellectual at that time, wrote this treatise called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which was making fun of Swedenborg. You had some really negative reviews written about his books that are just saying this is totally made up. There's nothing in it, and you're just doing this. And people couldn't really figure out why, though, because we did a show on my YouTube channel called Off the Left Eye. We did a show called Was Swedenborg Crazy? And while it's really hard to make the argument that he went crazy, because while the stuff that he was talking about was really out there, he was saying, no, you can talk to angels. Angels and demons are all around you. The afterlife is right here and can influence you, and you can interact with it. Sure, he was talking about that, but he was doing it so efficiently and in such an organized way. I mean, the way that he was working, he was able to write these coherent books and take them to the publishers and market them, and continue to, whenever people would meet him in person, they'd say, well, he seems totally sane. He seems like a friendly, knowledgeable guy. He didn't seem the only thing that seemed crazy was that he's telling you that he met God and he can talk to angels and things. So it's the content, not the form, right?
Yeah, he's cool until he starts talking about these angels,
Exactly. And that's just the way it is too. When I first went on YouTube, I didn't know what was going to be out there. And I was like, oh man, back then I was still sort of nervous about being like publicly talking about all this sort of stuff. Because I thought, like my friends from high school are going to think I'm weird. But
they already think you're weird.
They already think I'm weird, so it's fine. No, I've actually found, I've been pleasantly surprised how many people are interested in learning about hearing experiences. And I have to give some credit to Dr. Raymond Moody, who wrote Life After Life, which is the book that made up the term near-death experience. I think that his work in there and people telling their stories got people to realize a little bit more. I mean, and there's a lot of people in the Christian world who I went and got to meet with. There's a pastor now, his name is escaping me, but he's in Houston, and he wrote this book about NDEs and how they line up with Christian teaching. So I think people are getting more used to it.
Yeah, it's popular right now, especially with the pandemic and what we're going through, and people I do NDE episodes as well, and those stats are out of the roof right now because people are scared what really happens when we die. It's becoming a reality. We're facing it every day. So, what is hell? Are angels real? Is someone going to show up and protect us? Like, there's all of these questions that people have as a collective, which now somebody's work like Swedenborg's can return to say, there is some comfort and you can know in these kind of things. And so what a perfect time for his work to resurface.
Yeah. And you know what he does that I really like is he gives like a framework to fit those experiences into.
Yeah.
Because people will have these strong experiences of all kinds.
Yes.
And I've been to near-death experience conferences, or it's not even that. People have spiritual experiences all the time. There are so many different kinds. If you just are in a room with 20 people, somebody in there has had some kind of otherworldly experience. And I didn't really realize that till I got online and started doing this stuff. It happens all the time. But often people, they may have really good feelings around that experience, that it may have inspired them. They often don't. They are longing for a bigger picture to put it in. Like, how does this whole thing work? How does this connect with that? They're looking for like a structure, a theological structure. And I think that Swedenborg gives this explanation that can really be a relief to people.
Yeah.
With that.
Sounds so familiar. And like you said, like owning your truth and the things that keep you up at night, like what's going on in your heart and your thoughts, and what are you studying, and owning that, even if it is a little bit weird, right? And maybe you do question your own sanity. I totally did, and we all do. I got a message from a friend of mine yesterday who, in contemplation, had like this voice come to you and was like, hey, you're you might be insane. What are you doing looking into all this stuff, talking to the saints and thinking they can hear you and all of this, deceased relatives or UFOs, this all of the stuff that we talk about. And he
Yeah.
said he opened the Bible in prayer and went directly to this scripture, which says, are we really insane? It is for God's sake, or are we sane? Then it is for your sake. And it says, we are ruled by the love of Christ. Like, opened up the Bible thinking he was insane, these thoughts of contemplation. And because if you're insane, you might want to zip your mouth, you might want to just not tell anybody about the insanity. But it's little things like that, these little nudges, I say, from the spirit world, synchronicities even, where God and the angels are orchestrating things in our life. So synchronicity is a big thing, and I think that the angels kind of move things around for us according to prayer, according to what's going on in the spirit world, according to our actions and deeds and stuff like that. Did Swedenborg talk about that at all? Whether it was synchronicity? I know that term came a lot later, but the angels and their role in organizing things in our lives.
Yeah.
I'm in deep, crazy, insane studies about this stuff right now. So I'm asking this as a student also.
Sure. No, I love talking about this. And just to pause for a second on the friend you mentioned and the search to do I want to talk about what I'm experiencing? I think at the core, it's honesty.
Yeah.
That people are being honest about things, even if they might seem strange. And when I am talking about Swedenborg and his material, I want to be honest about how much it's helped me. And even if it causes some people to think he's some dumb spiritual YouTuber, I don't care about him, but somebody else who is at the end of their rope and is really looking for help and gets help out of that, that's worth like 1,000 people who don't like it. So you just feel like, you just got to, and you can talk about your own subjective experience and be honest about it. And then I think that opens, it always is that people will come forward and say, I had experienced something like that. It just gets us out of our little fear capsule that we're in.
They're actually waiting for you to own your story, because they have a level of fear that they would never speak about it, or they could lose their job, or they can lose their role as a pastor to talk about their ayahuasca ceremony or something, right? So when we speak about it and we own it, truth is ridiculed, it's made fun of, you're called insane, until it catches on and people are like, hey, I had a very similar experience. And so they're waiting for you to articulate it, even if it's something that they believe deep in their core, that maybe they saw it in a movie, but it resonated because it's in their DNA. Maybe their ancestors experienced it, but they have no context for it, or biblical context. If somebody who wants to stay within the confines of the scriptures, how do I find going to heaven? How do I find leaving my body? And where do I find meditation or being visited by angels? And we know all of that stuff is in there and more. And it takes a brave, strong soul to step out and own that. I was ridiculed and mocked and laughed at by my peers locally. But then I go online and just own my story, and they're the ones commenting and stuff and still mocking. But eventually it falls upon the right ears. And now you have a popular podcast and people are getting help and knowing that they're not alone. And that's like one of the smallest things why everyone should own their story, is just to let people know that they're not alone. And I know we hear that so much, but it is so powerful for sure.
That's great. Yeah. And you putting yourself out there is leading somebody to make those connections. And you feel sorry for people who are torn because they feel like you're saying, I want to be loyal to my religion. Yeah. I want to be a good Christian or good whatever religion you're in.
I don't want to scare my friends.
Yeah.
Tell them I'm visited by UFOs at night. Let's don't go to his house at night because he's crazy.
Right. Well, we get scooped up. Yeah. So, but also you're having these experiences and you need some way, these two worlds that are both true to you don't seem to talk to each other. And I think particularly the spiritual experiences and angels and spirits, and then Christianity and the Bible. Swedenborg is this amazing bridge between those two that I think a lot of people have expressed relief at. I can assimilate these experiences into the parts of my religion that I still want to keep. As far as angels and your question about the synchronicity, so the way that the Lord runs the universe, and Swedenborg uses the term the Lord to refer to Jesus Christ, but God in Jesus. So this is how his most common term to talk about God is the Lord. So the way that the Lord runs the universe is through what he calls divine providence. So that is the God guiding every detail of our life to lead us into heaven, to prepare us for heaven if we're willing to accept a life that is the life of heaven, which is following the two great commandments, right? Love of God, love of the neighbor. And God works through angels to do that in our lives. We always have angels around us. You actually couldn't be conscious without having angels present. That the consciousness, as all life does, comes out of God initially. Everything, just like think about the sun, all the energy and all the ecosystems on Earth, pretty much, except for a couple of hydrothermal vents like at the bottom of the ocean, most everything that's alive is directly dependent on the sun. Either it's the plants themselves that are photosynthesizing, or it's the animals that eat the plants or the animals that eat those animals. So just like that, just like all the energy that's powering the biosphere is coming out of the sun, all of the life in all of us is coming out of God. So that includes our consciousness. But the way that consciousness reaches us is through, it goes like from God into heaven, because angels in heaven are most open to receiving it, kind of like a transformer with electricity, right? It's got to be stepped down to a state where you can use it in your house without it frying all your appliances. So they step that down, and then we're around them, and we're able to accept God's life coming through them into our mind. And he actually says that there are angels and evil spirits around everyone. And that through the angels, you have heaven around you, and through the evil spirits, you have hell around you. And by having both around, you're in freedom, like you're in equilibrium, where you can choose what the angels are offering you, or you can choose what the evil spirits are offering you. Because only when you choose what the angels are offering you in freedom can you really accept God into you. Because God could have just made everyone robots. You're all going to be exactly how I want you to be right in the beginning. Obviously, that's not how it is. And what Swedenborg is saying is that the only actual bond of love we can form with the Lord is one that we freely enter into. Love without freedom isn't really love. So the angels and spirits around us give us the environment that lets us make that choice. And everything in our life is guided to help us recognize what is good and what is evil, and hopefully make a choice towards what is good. And so divine providence, that's the primary aim of it, is to form your spirit into an angelic spirit. So to make you into somebody who has God living through you, right? That all of the love and everything good that comes out of God, that becomes what you want to put out into the world and what you want to do for the world. So that is a process that's going on from the very start of when we're born, and really never ends to eternity. That you can always be improved, and you can always be brought closer to God, and through being brought closer to God, closer to the human race.
Okay. So with that being said, right, and I'm on this same study as well, like really deep and the levels. So I want to ask you about that. So
sure.
Did he come up with levels? I'm a student of the Bible, and we hear levels of light. So there's 7 spectrums of light with the rainbow, right? And so there's 7 so-called 7 chakras. There's 7 seals of revelation, 7 churches. Were there levels that go up and levels that correspond and go down? Did he have a number, is what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. So he does talk about 3 levels of heaven, 3 levels of hell, and then the world of spirits in the middle.
So that would be 7 altogether.
You could certainly find a 7. I would say that 7 is a very important number to Swedenborg. That he talks about all the instances of 7 in the Bible are referring to what is complete and holy. Yeah. That each number has a particular meaning. So there's nothing in the Bible where, we're talking about there's 7 sheep over there, or there's 7 churches. This is not just a number. It's telling you a really important spiritual concept. So the number 7 is absolutely a key number for him there. And the levels of heaven and the levels of hell, they're essentially levels of acceptance of God. So we are built to be able to open up and accept God through that freedom that I was talking about. And the more that you accept, the higher and higher levels of heaven you enter. He talks about it's not the same as it's just like, oh, you got to climb up some stairs and you get to the next one. It's about what's going on in your heart and your mind. He says that they're not levels like levels of a building, but it's levels like if you think about the way your body is structured. So you can think of it just on the level of, let's say, organs. You can say, oh, I have lungs, I have heart, I have a brain. There's these big building blocks that make me who I am. But if you go down like a microscopic level, you'll see that your heart is made up of a bunch of different tissues, right? And then if you go even closer to that, it's actually made up, all those tissues are made up of a ton of cells. So he says to be open at the first level is like just basic opening. Like, okay, got my heart open, I've got my mind open. But to be open at the second level is like every little tissue within your heart metaphorically is open, like all of the little pieces of you. And then the third level is every little bit of all your thoughts and feelings is open to God. That's what heaven is. And that's what Providence is trying to do. Hell is the opposite. Hell is you're more and more closed off from God. And the further you close yourself off, the more and more you start to act like the opposite of God's love. And that's what creates these levels of heaven and hell. And those levels of heaven and hell have a huge effect on the consciousness of people that are here in this world, because it's sort of like if a stream is polluted upstream, the people downstream have a problem too, right? Where the worse that the things get there, the worse our day-to-day consciousness is. So it's important, all this work you're doing to try to be a good person and live that love, that actually can just a little bit improve consciousness for everyone.
It shows what's possible, and it encourages people to there's resonance, there's calibration to pull people up higher, to show, first of all, to show them. I mean, that was the story of Christ, that he showed us how to walk in love. He showed us, we read about it in the Old Testament. We read how you're supposed to, wow, we're not supposed to kill anybody. This is insane. This is new. And Jesus, like, you shouldn't have to be told. That law is now written on your heart, and I'm going to show you how to love people. I'm going to show you how to forgive. I'm going to show you how to ascend. And in doing so, kind of like you said, Emanuel talks about open up realms where you'll see the angels of heaven ascending and descending upon the Son or the sons of man. It gets really deep. Does he talk about that? Like each level, whether it's level of heaven or level of your body, that angels that govern those levels that you open yourself up to, such as the demons. You heard my story.
Yeah.
I started off, if there are levels, I started off at level -3, the
Right.
pits of insanity, like, but not a good insanity. My friend was texting me about insanity, but there's a corresponding level of beautiful insanity, of bliss, correspondence on that level, where I saw demons' faces, and they're coming to kill me. I'm done. My soul was going to be destroyed. And that was at, let's say, level -3. I don't know the actual level. I'm just throwing that out there. But there is correspondence, as the other side is, the angels are here to assist me. God is madly in love with me. He is looking for ways to bless me and to speak to me and to encourage me. Like, it's flip side of it. It's a sense of psychosis, but beautiful, loving, blissful psychosis. Does he talk about the angels or the spirits that get access to you according to your sin or what level you're on?
There's a process that Swedenborg talks about at length that it's translated a couple of different ways. In the most recent translations, it's trials of the spirit. And he says that there are these episodes of spiritual crisis, which are how essential to our spiritual growth. Everybody goes through, in their own ways, these dark nights of the soul, and they perform a couple of functions for us. So it's divine providence allowing that to happen to us because, well, look what happened with you, right? You
Yeah,
had
best thing ever.
this thing happen to you. You're still talking about it. It's still informing. It's made you understand now the difference between good and evil in a much clearer way. And he says that Jesus did that same thing. All the trials with the devil in the
Yeah.
wilderness. You hear about a few of them, but even further back, Swedenborg says that all of the wars in the Old Testament are actually describing states of some of the battles that Jesus went through as he was trying to sort out this human race that had gotten all absorbed in all the kinds of horrific evil things, exactly to the point where, oh, we're not supposed to kill people, really, we shouldn't do that. This is not how Jesus is. So there's this huge reordering that he had to do. And the way that it works is that when we're in these spiritual trials, even though hell is the closest to us then, and it shows up differently for different people. Some people may have an overt experience like you're talking about where there's really demons. Other people can just have sort of a really terrible time where they're getting depressive thoughts, because demons and angels can show up really clearly in your thoughts and feelings as well, even if it doesn't get to the point where you're actually seeing them through your what Swedenborg would call your spiritual senses. When hell is close, heaven is close, really close as well, because they're right there protecting and moderating and making sure that you're safe, and that this ultimately is God's providence bends everything evil into good. So how can I take what's harmful and scary and turn it into something that's going to go on and create goodness in you and out in the world? And the way that heaven and hell are arranged, there are actually, everybody in heaven is directly opposed to certain people in hell. So if there's a part of hell that is all about revenge or something, take some particular evil, and that's what they get their joy of their joy of their life from that, and that's what they want to do. Is there's going to be some group in heaven that's all about forgiveness, right? And that they balance each other out. So there is, as you said, there's this corresponding.
Yeah.
It's the two are the opposite of each other. So whatever part of God
who designed it that way? So because obviously in Christendom, that's bad. I can't believe that demons exist. Why would God create such entities that torment? And my work, I put out a book, Spirit Realm, Angels, Demons, Spirits, and the Sovereignty of God. And it teaches you, like, these things are here to, like you said, to teach you and to serve a purpose. Like, can you speak to that? Because so many people, like, when you're going through it, please deliver me, deliver my soul out of hell, Lord. Please, I need you. But it creates the contrast. It creates okay, if you do that again, guess who's gonna come see you? You're gonna go visit those guys again, Yeah.
So nothing is allowed except what can be made useful through providence. So let's say that I started to take a demonic route in life. So let's say that I've got good and bad urges that come into me. Like, I want to be nice to that person. I want to be mean to that person. I want to take their things. I want to dominate them in some way. Let's say I start acting on those, that I think, I can steal from this person. I can cheat. I start to bring hell closer and closer to me, because the joy of serving someone and knowing that they're happy, that's what heaven is. And the joy of exploiting, abusing, harming someone, that's hell. So the more that I get immersed in that joy, and the more that I make it who I am, the more and more of a demon I become, right? I still look like me physically, but my spirit is getting more and more corrupt. So let's say I get to the point where that's what I do, and that's what I enjoy. And I want to go and try to harm people. So even if I'm intending harm, God can use providence so that the hurtful things that I do actually end up turning to good, because the people that I try to hurt end up stronger afterwards, or all the time. If you go and hear like a TED talk and somebody's talking about I survived this horrible thing, and now I know that I want to rid the world of it. I want to rid the world of trafficking or something like that. Right? Good can come out of it, and that person. So somehow, even if I'm in a demonic state and I'm intending evil, God can use that to bring good. And there's times, right, when the only way somebody's going to change is if they have to get snapped out of it. Have you read Howard Storm's near-death experience?
I don't think so.
So he was one of the earlier ones that I read, and he had this 2-part experience where the first part was really graphically evil. So there was like demons, and they tore him apart, and it was really, really traumatizing for him, really painful for him. And then he had this time when he called out for God, and Jesus showed up, and it changed his life. And when he tells that story, because I got to meet him, and he never says, I wish I didn't have the first part. Like, it was horrific, and he doesn't like to talk about it, but the impact that it had is now this treasure that he has in him, right? And it's not anything that's violent or that's harmful. This is not God's first option, right? God is love. And you think about how you are if you're holding a little baby. Like, you would never want, I don't want to do anything that's going to make that baby uncomfortable. Like, I just want it to be so that's how God feels about each of us. Only as a last resort, if this is the only way that some important essential spiritual growth thing can happen. Okay, I'm going to allow this negative thing to happen to you, but I'm going to care for you during it. And in the end, we're going to be better off. And it's the only reason why I would allow this to happen to you. So yeah, God is all about usefulness. Something has to be bring a good use out of it. So I'm only going to allow anything that's harmful and hellish if good's going to be brought out of it. And because of the freedom thing, if I set my heart on, I just want to do these hurtful, terrible things, and that's what I want to do, God's going to try to get me to stop. But ultimately, that's my choice. So if I do, okay, I'm going to put myself in hell, but God is still going to try to keep me as safe as possible in that state and try to get me to be a little less in hell, and then a little less in hell. So there's always that I'm going to bring good out of this, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't go too far.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So with the afterlife and with heaven and hell, right? So the Christian idea is that you believe in Jesus, you get a free pass to heaven. That's it. There's only heaven and hell. And then we're talking about these different levels or layers of heavens, right? And you being able to experience that for eternity. Is that kind of what goes on? Like, you pass the test, and so earth would be maybe a school where you're tested and tried to see if we can trust you in the higher realms of heaven, or if you need to be taught in the lower realms of hell a little longer. Many people see earth as a school, right? And where you're going to spend eternity. But again, the Christian idea is like everybody just gets to go to one place, and that's heaven. So these different levels of heaven. So we're bringing more love and more light and more of God in us, so that we become lighter, so that our souls can ascend to the heights of the heavens where God is, versus having to be in there, but you're not really welcomed in the bedroom or, the master chamber or something like that, if you will.
Right. Yeah. So it's not, a couple of thoughts come to mind when you're saying that. The way that Swedenborg would say it, it's not, well, I was going to say it's not, do you believe in Jesus or not? But it's more, what does that mean? I believe in Jesus. Like, I can say that, but doesn't Jesus say, people who said to me, Lord, Lord.
Yeah.
But they didn't really do what I was telling them to do. They're not, what's really believing in Jesus? If I say like, it's Martin Luther King Day, I really love that, but I'm going to go and act like a racist on Martin Luther King Day. Which is it? It's the life you live, right?
You didn't really love Martin Luther King. You just said that to get in the door.
Exactly. So you can say, and this was part of the reason why he had pushback from the Christian church in his time, because he's like, there's a bunch of people walking around who will say, oh, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I love Jesus Christ, and yet they're breaking all the commandments. They're treating people terribly.
They're racist.
Yeah, exactly.
The eerie thing. I mean, I would say just about my life, but many people we're getting to a similar place of what this guy was teaching a long time ago that, and I haven't read his work. Obviously, I'm influenced maybe by people who have been influenced by his work. I'll say that. But something else that we've talked about, the scripture says when a seed dies, that it's able to go into the ground or to the spirit and multiply. So instead of Emanuel Swedenborg or Jesus having to be one place at one time talking to a crowd at a TED Talk, it is now, these ideas are now in the ethers, in the heavens, to where, again, I haven't looked up any of this stuff, but I'm coming to these same conclusions, and you have to give credit where credit is due. The mind of the seeker is to, hold on, I didn't come up with this. There are people who had very similar concepts, and I'm in that energy. We're in that energy. It was so powerful and so potent that now, as people progress, they kind of come to a similar understanding. Whether it had anything to do with him and his spirit and his knowledge going out, or the place that he got to is a level of heaven, a level of understanding that a lot of Christians or people eventually get to and see God in everything. Because everything that you're saying that he went through and he did, like, just got off of Bob Larson. They were asking me, is Jesus the only way? And I'm like, and Christians are like, answer the question, sir. Is Jesus the only way? And it's like, is that your ticket into heaven? Yeah, Jesus is the way, because Jesus is love. Love is the only way. So it's not just naming his name, but it's in deed and in character. If John 3:16, if you do what I tell you, this is eternal life. This is your ticket, not just to believe in me, but believe on him who sent me. And if you do believe, you're going to be imitators of me. You're going to love people. And so, man, I get it. Like, this is my burden. But yeah, the Christians are like, you didn't say it right. It's like, no, I really did. It's just way over your head. It's so simple that you misunderstand it, because they want, it's in a confession, but not knowing that your life is your confession. Your love is your confession.
I agree 100%. It's just like the Pharisees and Jesus. The Pharisees were checking all the boxes. They said, hey, we know you're not supposed to help somebody on the Sabbath because that's the rule. And Jesus says, just relax, and we need to help this person. Yeah. And they're saying, if you knew,
not today, you don't.
Yeah, right. If you knew who that woman was, you wouldn't let her in because she's a prostitute. And he says, hey, she's doing something here for me that none of you are doing. There's a whole thing. And this was actually Swedenborg's main adversary, was what he called faith alone. He said that this was a thing that was rotting the Christian church, was this idea that you can separate your theology from love, when actually theology is meant to be the way that the love expresses itself. This is why Jesus was talking about works. And when he said, hey, teacher, what are the two great commandments? Did he say the greatest commandment is that you say the right things? No, love God, love your neighbor. And so to take those and separate them, this has been the thing that has caused the most spiritual destruction for the human race. Who did that?
Who do you think? Was it the Protestant Reformation? Like, who? I don't know who. Like, who do you think did it, man?
He says that there was a Council of Nicaea in like 300 where that was really bad.
He talks about them.
Yep, he does. So there's definitely been decisions by the organized church that did that. The other thing, though, is like every individual Christian who says, I'm a Christian, but goes out and lives contrary to Christianity. I was just reading, because in Heaven and Hell, so he wrote this book called Heaven and Hell. That was his best-selling book. Basically because he was writing a bunch of in-depth stuff about the Bible and what it means, and people were sort of interested in that, but they're more saying, tell us about life after death. You saw heaven? Let me know about that. So he was writing in there, and he had this section about non-Christians, and he said that often non-Christians, when they get to the afterlife, more readily accept the truth about God than Christians. Because if you're a Christian and you've become adamant about something that's contrary to Jesus's love, you actually, even when you get there, you're like, no.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, you get this dissonance, and really it doesn't matter what you say is nothing compared to why you're saying it and what
Yeah.
you believe. It's the heart, right? The mouth speaks out of the treasure of the heart. And that is what happens in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, so this is the world you come into after death, and where you're sorting out, are you going to heaven or are you going to hell based on what you love. That is where you can't have a dissonance anymore. You can't say, I love God, I love
No,
God, but inside what you love is yourself
it's
and your
so
own
good,
power
man.
and esteem. So that he's saying that's what the commandment against idolatry. You can look at a statue and it can make you think of God, and it can make you think of serving your that can be a focusing tool for you. Sure, it could get out of control, but that's not what that's about. That's not a big enough issue that God is commanding. The idolatry commandment is in your heart. What do you really venerate? And if what the most important thing is to you is your own power and your own reputation and whatever else it is, even more so than God, which is God is the love. God expresses that love that's in those two great commandments. Then that's idolatry. It's you're putting yourself and your own gain above that, and we naturally do that, right? You just are born into that, but life is this process of getting out of it. But if you think it's enough to just say, oh yeah, I'm Christian,
Yeah.
I go to church, but yet inside what I do when I go home and I start thinking about things, I just like scroll through my phone and see people that I don't like, and I hate them, and I treat people meanly when I'm at the grocery store, and I cheat on my wife. This that's what makes you who you are. It's not about what you say, because that doesn't take root, that doesn't grow.
Are you familiar? And I say this as much as I can. I got to tell people. Are you familiar with Billy Graham when he spoke about the end time revival that's coming on with Robert Schuller? There was an interview that he did towards the end of his life. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Okay, so he essentially says, and this was a part of my spiritual awakening to hear
Uh-huh.
this man of faith, one of the greatest evangelists of our day, that preached preached the gospel so that it would work on your conscience. Not it was
Yeah.
just a decision that you want to go to heaven, but the gospel is supposed to prick your heart, and then it's supposed
Right.
to change you from the inside out, just like what you said. And Billy Graham was one of the greatest of our day. So at the end of his life, he's doing this talk with Robert Schuller, and they're in the Crystal Cathedral. He says, Billy, do you think that we'll see this great end time harvest and all of these souls coming to God and coming into the church? Are we going to see a revival in the end times? Are we getting ready? And Billy Graham says, no, we're not going to see this great revival. He said, I believe it's something similar to what the Apostle James talks about, that God has a people for his namesake who may have not even heard the name of Christ. He said that there's people from the Muslim world, there's people from the Hindu world, the Buddhist world. They've never heard the name of Jesus, but there's something in them that makes them be in service to others instead of service to self, to recognize that there is a God. Even though I may not have all of the theology down, I have what they've given me, and I'm doing it to the best of my ability. He says those people are a part of the body of Christ. When Jesus says that I have other sheep that are not of this fold that you know not of, he's speaking of these people who we counted out. We counted the prostitute out.
Yeah.
Christians still count the prostitute out. That's somebody's mother. That's a single mom who's doing what she can do. Maybe you should show her grace. See her as your
Yeah.
sister. See her the way that God sees her. And then you step into this place of restoration and seeing things the way that God sees them. But that spiritual sight that is attained with bringing love and bringing light into your understanding, into your heart. It is a level of consciousness. And I love it is very simple, but the intricacies of the process that Swedenborg talks about, that is dispensed through many vessels, that you come to a similar understanding. Obviously, at some point, it's to be said, if somebody is seeking heaven and seeking good, you're going to eventually come up with the same stuff. And again, that's for people who are
Yeah.
Hindus or Buddhists or Muslims or whatever. If they're truly seeking, they're going to find. Ask, seek, knock. But hearing him say that, it lit a fire in me, man. To stop
Yeah.
judging my Catholic friends or my Hindu friends and start judging the fruit. Hold on. I like being around this guy. He's funny. He makes me feel good. He's a good person. I feel warmth when I shake his hand. He carries himself in a way that is beautiful, spiritual, peaceful, but my cognitive dissonance tells me that he's my enemy because he doesn't name the name of Christ. But like we've been saying, your actions, your love, and what you do is your aroma. It is your incense that goes up into the heavens that the spirits take notice of, and that is what
Yeah.
names the name of Christ alone.
I love that. Yeah, that's such an inspiring message that he had. And I think this gets back to what you were saying before, that it's in the air, because Swedenborg has that exact thing written, that it is that attitude of, I believe that there's some kind of God, and I'm doing what I believe is right in service to fellow human beings. That is the name of Jesus, because it's the quality that makes Jesus
Because
Jesus.
that's not his name anyway. So if it
Yeah.
was about
Yeah.
getting the name right or the confession right, you've
Yes,
already
you are.
messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
come on.
exactly. Name anywhere, all through
Vernacular.
the Bible. All through the Bible, it talks
good
about
point.
names. Yeah, it talks about, there's a new name. Give everyone a stone where there's a new name written on it that nobody knows except me. Who cares if you get a new name? Somebody called me. Name is about the quality of who you are. Swedenborg says that actually in the spiritual world, the way that people communicate there is not through language. Like here, you'll have an idea, and then you've got to think of what's the word that represents that idea, and then I say it, like a horse. Okay, I can picture a horse. What English word is it? Horse. But there, you're actually able to verbalize or directly communicate the concept horse, right?
Mhm.
So, because everything there is, and this is all through near-death experiences, you'll get that.
Yeah.
People say we communicated mentally. It doesn't mean people
Telepathically
don't.
or through discerning
Right.
my intention.
So everything there, every way you communicate a concept is that concept. So in the spiritual world, you have a name that is the entire essence of you communicated, right? It is actually who you are. It's not just your parents are looking at a baby book and they pick something they think might be a good name for you. You have a name that is actually your character. So think about the name of God, right? That is the full character of God. And so if somebody is living with that character, which is that warmth when you shake their hand, right? Then they're ready. They've got the Jesus in here, and it's just going to keep growing.
So good. So good. So good. So let me ask you about this, right? You hear about people who have had near-death experiences and, have attained light and added this light to their life and their bodies. And there's levels in the spirit, you can feel that. Does he talk about being able to at least commune with the angels that way, or to get, we call them downloads now, epiphanies,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But even with people, like Jesus would walk up to a crowd and he can feel what they were thinking. He knew their hearts.
Yeah.
Like you can walk up next to a person and say, "Oh, okay, that guy, something's going on," and they don't have to say anything. Their name is their character. It's coming out of their heart. It's their it's their torus or toroidal field, which is the law, the energy that's coming out of them. You can feel it if you're tapped in and know how to feel energy, which Jesus knew how to do. The angels communicate that way. The Swedenborg talk about, I heard some people talk about psychic abilities and some dreams and visions and things that he was getting. But did he ever talk about being able to discern and know things before they happened, and tapping into some of that angelic ability, ESP on the earth?
Seems like it. If you just Google Swedenborg and go to his Wikipedia page, there's a famous episode that he had, which is called the Stockholm Fire account, the reason why it's meaningful is that, or remarkable, is that there's just so many people that witnessed it. So based on accounts of that, it's all just accounts, but he was at a dinner party and partway through started to get really agitated. Like he was noticeably upset. And people were asking him, what's going on? Why are you upset? And he said, well, a fire just broke out in my hometown. And this is back in 1700s. That was a couple days travel. So there's no way he couldn't have just been checking his phone. So he was upset for a little while, and then later he relaxed and he said, okay, they put it out like 2 houses away from my house, because his house, which I assume would have all his writings in it and stuff, was, so it was spared. And everyone was like, okay, that's this guy. See what this guy. And but then a couple of days later, once people had time to travel from Stockholm, they said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. So there was a couple of things. There was another famous one where after it started to get out that Swedenborg was having these spiritual experiences, initially he was publishing anonymously. Which I guess I learned that he did that whenever he'd break into a new field, because he thought, well, my name doesn't do any good in this field. if I'm studying anatomy but I want to do something on geology, no one's going to care that I'm an anatomist. Or it could be that with this particular new field, the theology is so different that they might be saying, well, you're not ordained. How do you know anything about this? But he was publishing anonymously, but eventually it got out that it was him writing these books. And so all of these, the who's who of the like European monarchy would want to test it. They'd say, are you really having these? So there was an episode that was fairly well documented where there was as a queen, I can't remember which country it was for, but he was able to tell her something about her dead brother that nobody could have known, and it made quite an impression on her. There was another account where there was a woman who was going to somebody had died in her family, and so there was a note that was supposed to be the will that would give the property to her so she wouldn't lose it and become poor, but she couldn't find it. And Swedenborg went to her and was like, it's fell back behind the drawer, it's over here. So she found it right where he said. There was a couple of instances like that seemed to indicate that Swedenborg had what you could call ESP or clairvoyance or something like that. Sailors would love sailing with him because it seemed like he always got good weather, these sorts of things. Like there's these anecdotes that trickle back. He doesn't make a very big deal of it. Like in his books, he doesn't talk about it's important for us to try to achieve that state. He's much more focused on regeneration and repentance. Mm-hmm. So this is how you shun what's evil and do what's good. Yeah. He does say, though, that the state that you can get into, where you can converse with angels and spirits, there's nothing alien about that state. That's actually the state that people used to be in earlier in human history. We really just messed up that connection by the human race getting so intertwined with evil and falsity, which destroyed that spiritual link, made the spiritual world a dangerous place for us to just be able to talk to all the time, because you don't know what you're opening up to. But he never said like, oh, I have some special abilities you can't get. This is something that people could get.
That's what, you got to watch out for that really quick. So I'm the only one. Okay, see you later, buddy.
No, it's the thing, he gives you the mechanics of why it works. So the reason how you can get there is spiritually, it's almost like everybody has ESP spirit when you're a spirit, meaning like after your body dies and you go into the afterlife, because there's an aura around you, which is essentially your character and thoughts projected around you. So what you're talking about, that we can sense a little bit of it physically, where something's going on with that person, but there it's just very clear. He says angels can tell.
Yeah, there would be no speech or gender or anything there, right?
Well, angels can tell, like, on your approach, but by the first word you say, they can just know everything about you. Everything about what your character is, what you're like, and everything like that. So everybody has these spiritual auras that go out, and he just mentions it in passing, but he says that there's something physical that's not too different from that. So he certainly lays like the groundwork for how you could, if somebody, because there's definitely people that report saying, well, I can know when very clearly when someone's struggling with something or when they need to hear something. There's definitely a spiritual mechanism that would explain why people have that. He doesn't give a lot of instructions on how to get there, but again, he was saying you don't need that. They can do good things, but that's not the most important part of your spiritual growth.
Yeah, for sure. That's, and I think we again, that's a natural state, and so obviously you would want to know how to naturally act in that environment if that stuff starts happening, because it could totally
For sure.
scare you. You can end up, if it can be done on the demonic levels, again, there has to be the corresponding level of angels are now assisting you versus
Yeah.
demons scaring you and appearing in your dreams and whispering in your ear. Like, that's a level. So the same thing with, I would say, with spiritual gifts that can be used for good or bad. Like, all of this stuff is everything is a tool. And so
Right.
you are a tool, when it comes to you, everything that you see, you call it good or bad. Like, no, that's a prostitute. Nope, somebody's daughter, somebody's mom. And
Yeah.
Jesus is like, I'm madly in love with her. I'm gonna die for her. I'm gonna shed my blood so that she can be restored. I'm gonna go talk to her. Not even that, but I'm gonna go talk to her so she can be restored. Let's bring it into the now moment. I'm gonna go talk to
Yeah.
her so my speech can restore her. I'm gonna give her a hug so that can restore her. Versus everybody else is like, that's a prostitute, man, or that's a leper. We can't touch them because we'll become unclean.
Yeah.
Obviously, the more light that you bring into your understanding, into your heart, it changes the way that you view people and things, and you don't see the things the way that you are. You begin to see them the way that they are, and the way that God sees them. And that's why I'm obsessed with this process, and submitting, and figuring out how it works. And I'm seeing it in my life in so many ways, and I'm saying yes. And what it, the realms of consciousness that open up to you, that are beautiful, that are blissful, and anything that would taint that or try to take that away, becomes an enemy. But it's a choice, though. That's the thing. Like, all of it is attainable to stay in a place like that, or to turn it off. And that's the interesting thing. So I was going to ask you again with Swedenborg and tapping in and all that. And he say you would do a lot of this stuff daily. So did they ever talk about the practice? Was he getting into meditation? Was he fasting? Was he just doing it at night in a dream state? Did he do
Yeah.
automatic writing? How was he getting this information and seeing all of this stuff?
There was a progression. So throughout his life, he had a few scattered spiritual experiences. It seems like when he was a kid, he would tell his parents about talking with angels. I don't think it was that much more than you'll find pretty commonly with people. When it really started to become a main fixture of his life, there's actually a really good record of it, because he was keeping a journal. At the time, it was a travel journal. So he would just be writing in it, now I'm coming into Amsterdam, getting ready to go to Stock, which travel was a really big deal back then. It was dangerous and it took weeks. And so you're keeping a log of where you are, but he starts to record his dreams in it at one point. And it's published now as Swedenborg's Journal of Dreams. And it's one of the earliest records of somebody trying to analyze their own dreams. This is way before Freud or anything like that, but he would start to write down his dreams, and then he would start to say, oh, this is what I think this might mean. And the dreams start to really quickly take on an intense and spiritual theme to them. And he would, for example, he would see there's a black dog that he would see in his dreams, and he would say, I believe this is a symbol of my pride, because he was really talented and really smart, and he was struggling with that. And a dog would be attacking him in his dreams, and you think, okay, this is probably my pride. But then it started to get more and more intense to where he would start to have visions when he was in the hypnagogic state, or the state like right before you fall asleep, or right after you wake up. But then they began to spill more and more over into his waking life. And he records all this, and it culminates in a meeting with Jesus. And in that meeting is when he gets what he believes is his instructions to take this course with his life and start writing these books and do this. So from there, he begins to have experiences, what he calls in the state of full wakefulness, and have them all the time. As in, when he would just be going about his day, he would be able to see his office around him and be writing and things, but he can also see and hear spirits around him. So he would know and the spirits that were around him would even like comment on what he was writing, and the angels would inform him and he would see signs about whether what he was writing was true or not. So he
Now,
would see like a
were these a conversation in his head, or was this him physically, like seeing in the spirit world, like seeing beings
yeah,
and people
no,
around him?
like auditory, and he
Because you
described it in detail, like
so
you can, yeah.
so he heard it, so
He
he
heard
would
it
hear.
and saw it. So
Okay,
like,
saw it
but
too.
what I mean is like not like just like you're thinking and
Yeah,
feeling like you would see and hear other people.
yeah.
And he described it. He says when you're seeing and hearing spirits, it's just like you're seeing and hearing people, except the other people around you can't see and hear them.
Hmm.
But that was one part of it. But he would also regularly leave the body and go all the way into the spirit world. And in there, he has these very detailed accounts of this is a part of heaven I visited, and these are the angels that live there, and this is the kind of community they have, and this is what they believe about marriage or worship or what. He would give you a very detailed description of that, or he'd say, I went and visited hell. He had to get like the proper protection and preparation, and angels would go with him. But he'd go, I go and visit hell, and I talked to the demons that are in hell, and this is what they believe, and this is what they think. So he would have. There's quite a number of different categories of experiences that he would have, but he was having them all in every day. And so, as far as like how he got to that state and states in it, he barely talks about it. Which a lot of people want to know, like, how do you do that? He did have breathing stuff that he was doing. He talked a lot about the importance of the breath and the ways that different parts of your body are connected to the spiritual world, all these different ways. And he will say, like, I was meditating on this topic.
Yeah.
And as I was doing that, angels came to me and said, do you want to learn about this in heaven? And they'd take him with him. I don't know. When he says meditating, it could be that he means just thinking about it. It could mean he's doing what we now think of as meditating, where you close your eyes and you're focusing on something. He doesn't ever really lay out, here's all my techniques. You can get snippets of it, but he very much was having like full-blown panoramic spiritual experiences, but also sometimes having sort of augmented reality, where he would be at a party in the regular world and talking with people, but he'd also be aware of what spirits were saying and commenting on as that went by. So sort of like all of the above.
Well, look, if that's the case, man, then I'm sure that he were seeing spirits that were on people. You know what I'm saying? And being able to discern, like, hey, this guy is got some deep stuff he's dealing with, or we'll say seeing their aura or seeing them as a color. Like if you're in a party and you're tapped into that state, for sure, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. And he would even. There's stories of there was some people in the clergy who were attacking him, and he would say to him, you're surrounded by hell right now. There are evil spirits that are making you say this stuff, and you need to push them away. So he would get very direct about it. And yeah, I think he had a ton of insight into the character of other people, just because our character is very visible in the spiritual world, and the influences are very obvious once you have your eyes open to it.
Do you think my mind just goes to so many different places, and I'm like, should I open that door? That what if this let's just talk about it. Just the idea of our vessels being an avatar, or our bodies being a vessel, right? And we're influenced by other spirits,
right,
that are dead, or that are angels, or are the stars. Because a lot of this gets into the Greek philosophies and stuff too, that we're like emanations of the stars that are down here on the earth, and we kind of do what they do, and we feel what the stars tell you to feel, that kind of thing. But there's also like a war, the spiritual war for the human body, for your mind. Evil spirits want to like live in you or on you, kind of thing. What does he talk about? The idea of channeling, because in a sense, it's like we are all susceptible. And I'm not making this claim, but once we start studying, and we're open, I'm fine. Like the stuff Swedenborg, dude, I'm experiencing everything you're talking about, dude. Not just him though. It'd be easy for us to get on a pedestal and put out a book that say, I am Swedenborg reincarnated. I am him come back to tell you things. But not just him, though. Like, I'm finding other saints that died on my birthday that had encounters with demons that I've had, that I've never heard articulated ever, and I just found out last week. And so to put these things together, it's like we are emanations of these cycles that are repeating themselves, or the ideas are accumulating so that they can go to the next level, right? Because his work needs you, like, to
Right.
be that vehicle. What do you think that is? Is that a connection with him? Is that a connection with his ideas that, again, permeate what we'll call the book of life, or some would call the
Yeah.
Akashic records, that we're just getting inspirations? There's correspondence, again, because you're into this stuff, and then here's a book on Swedenborg. Read this and have your mind blown, because this is where you are, kind of stuff. Like, what do you?
Yeah.
I know it's hard to articulate this stuff, and it'll drive us
Sure.
mad, but I think it's beautiful to try.
Absolutely. I believe that we are constantly influenced intellectually and emotionally by the spiritual world. And Swedenborg says that actually all of our thoughts originate in God. That's the only source of life. They can be perverted and twisted on the way down so that it ends up being the opposite or something. But ultimately, all truth is coming from God. So when we're talking about Swedenborg and he was learning these things, he's only learning about something that's really real. And so other people are interacting with that and learning that
They
as
just
well.
don't care the science of it, or to commune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, there's going to be plenty of people that are tapping into different parts of this. There's that saying about there's an elephant and a bunch of people are blindfolded and they're each feeling a different part of the elephant. And one person's saying, well, this is like a snake or something because they're feeling the trunk. And someone else is saying, oh, this is like a donkey because it's got this little tail off the back, but you're just feeling different parts of the same elephant. So one of the things I like about Swedenborg is the similarities that he has to all these other things. And there's plenty of similarities to people who have had near-death experiences, but even there was a guy named D.T. Suzuki who was one of the main guys who brought Zen Buddhism into the West. And he wrote this book about Swedenborg called Buddha of the North, because the stuff, that's not to say, oh, Swedenborg is so great, but it's to say that the baseline themes that he's talking about, even though he's using Christian terminology, those harmonize very well with these core truths in Eastern philosophy.
And
so
and,
I think that
was he a student of that? Because then it could be like, okay, you're mixing the two. But again, the seeking process, that's how you know what truth is. Somebody that didn't study Swedenborg or Christianity, but you're coming up with the same stuff on your own,
Yeah, I don't think there's not really records of him studying that. There wasn't, in his day, there wasn't really as much cross-continental knowledge today. It's easy for me or you to look up and study Eastern philosophy. I think he had less access to it, but I think that there are fundamental truths that are just in the water, that are just in the air, so to speak, and people can pick up on those. And I think that, well, he says that the way that you think about things, like when you come to epiphanies or you come into a new phase of understanding, what causes that is, so you have a spirit and a body, right? And so your body is in a room right now, right? It's on a certain part of the globe. Like it has to be somewhere in the physical world. Well, your spirit is somewhere in the spiritual world. He says each of our spirits is in a community of other spirits in the spiritual world. And what community you're in has a huge impact on how you think and feel and everything. Because you're just like here, if you're in some Facebook group with a certain political view, you're going to come out of it talking like everyone else in there, right? So spiritually, it's the same thing. You've got your spirits around you who are influencing you. When you have some big shift in life, that's actually your spirit moving to a new community. So moving
again, it does lend to the avatar kind of thing, or
right.
Seated with Christ. We are now seated with Christ in heavenly places. So our soul is in making this journey now based upon actions that we do. Soul, spirit, true self, higher self. Those terms. Does that apply?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He said Swedenborg talks about what he calls an inner self and a spiritual self, and he wrote very clearly about the day when his spirit joined a heavenly community.
Wow.
So he said,
let me just interject because it's so interesting, because in my mind, I'm thinking when you die, your spirit gets to kind of make that upgrade and come on up to the higher planes, sir. It's like, no, you're already there. And as you make those decisions and shed your skin, you are, or shed your sin, you are getting lighter in the spirit world right now, and your name carries weight. Because your friends and who you know and how close you are. Really beautiful concept to think about that. Right now, we're making those adjustments.
Yeah, making it right now, and that when you die, like when your body leaves, all you do is end up heading to the community that you've been spending your life in, right? So we move communities as we learn new things, but it's really, he says, it feels like you're coming home, because even though physically this is where what I see and interact with day to day has to do with what country am I in, what state geographically am I in, but spiritually I'm somewhere. And the process of dying gets it so that you end up, your whole consciousness goes to where your spirit has been. But throughout our life, as we learn and as we push away things that are harmful and bring in things that are loving, you get to be more and more immersed in better and better communities, and that's what brings wisdom with it.
So awesome. I love it, man. I love it. So many places that we can go, and I say so many places that we can go, so many places we can park and really explore these concepts, even at the beginning of the Providence. Like, one thing I'm studying right now is rulers, and we hear, the Bible terms of principalities and powers, and like those are kingdoms, those are little worlds, and under them there's rulership, and there's beings that we read about as literal people in the Old Testament, I'll tell you that. But you can get some really interesting things about their hierarchy and how they interact with mankind. And I'm finding so much about the I guess what I would call the courts of heaven, this judicial system, and the judges, and even, I've always known the term magistrate, but I would read, that's another term for some of the gods in the Bible. A magistrate is a judge over lesser matters. So you have angels and you have beings that judge lesser matters that come based upon what you've done, and they judge the fruit of your labor. And Jesus comes and brings his rewards, his peace, his love, or you're given over to the officers. Like, there's this terminology in the scriptures, like it's all throughout there. I'm like blown away, because we look at it, a thing is literal. We translate everything literal, but obviously Swedenborg's telling you, listen, this is allegorical, this is metaphorical, this is spiritual, this is about your anatomy. It's also about the heavens. I mean, this is where I've been with my study, and it makes things make a lot of sense about these processes and these cycles of how does court work in heaven. Every night when you go to sleep, every week, every month, every new moon, every year, in every age, like the judgments and the things that you're doing are just, it's all in there. If you break the words down and you look at what it's really talking about, and if you take it at face value, you don't have access to it unless you look at it literal first. That's just what it is. You have to be able to be a good person, love your neighbor, forgive people who sin against you, bless those who are in need, spend time with the people that you think you're better than, or whatever you got. So it's teaching you how to get through all of that, which unlocks the book of Revelation, which is revelation, levels of revelation of the spirit world and how it operates. And not everybody cares. They're content with just being a good person and loving God. But that's the starting point. Everybody has to go through that. If not, you come in through another gate and you're a liar, a robber, and a thief. And so, man, we could park on any of that stuff. But to keep it about Swedenborg, and I want to I maybe wrap it up a little bit, and I can have you back on, because I love this conversation. Obviously, this is where I am right now spiritually, and this is amazing how God you said orchestrates everything. I think he orchestrated this talk and is introducing me to Swedenborg's work, and to go back to the very thing that we started, so that you don't feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
You know how crazy this sounds to try to tell somebody I had to tell my wife. I opened up a level. I reached a new level, and I didn't say it was a level in the soul levels, but I reached a new level 2 months ago. God opened up a seal of revelation to me, and the Bible just started meaning something different. His spirit was a supernatural experience. It was a staple on my life, and I know I experienced it. I was at my computer crying and typing for a week. He was giving me downloads. He was connecting scriptures that I didn't know went together. He's telling me to open this word up in the Greek, break that into Hebrew, and every time I did, it was synapses connecting. It was a supernatural experience that was so strong at first, and I'm trembling, I'm crying, but it lasted a week straight of just straight download. And then I'm like, I'm excited to tell people, like, I got to roll this idea off somebody. I'm trying to tell my wife. Do you know how like scared I was to be like, it was just coming out of me though. It was so good. And like, but it's scary because you're like, oh, you're insane. You're a crazy person.
Yeah.
I've never heard this before. I was like, you're going to hear it, and I'm going to show you biblically, because we can talk about this all day. I love it. But everything that you're saying, I'm sure you said Swedenborg was like, can navigate you through the Bible and show you this stuff too, right?
Absolutely. It's always been fascinating to me that people who have near-death experiences, they often, you think you have that, you meet God, and it's so wonderful. The rest of your life, you're going to be set, right? It's just no problem. But people have a hard time often afterwards because they're back to being regular people, and they've got
to pay them bills. The bill collectors are knocking at the door. You
got to pay the bills, and you're in this world that's weird and superficial, but you're trying to match that up with what you experienced. It's tough for people, and just like you were saying, you're having this awesome experience which is so meaningful to you, but it's like, oh, now my wife thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And so
I felt that way. Like, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, do I sound crazy? Because if God doesn't grace me how to articulate this, I'm screwed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's important for people to be trying to hammer away on ways to articulate it and find ways to describe it, because everything else that we humans do, we work hard at articulating. You think of the way when people invent a new technology and they have to go, and corporations spend all this time and money trying to get you to understand why it's important or what it means, and they do all this design work. You can't just say, oh, spiritual things will take care of themselves. It's work. It's work to get in there and render the greatest service. Think about how much, I was going to grab my phone, but it's not, how much work went into making a phone easy to use, right? You got to put work into making it so that some people are going to be getting these downloads like you're talking about, or could just like some engineers could just know how to do computers really well, but they're doing all this work to get it so anyone can pick up that phone and use it. We want to get it to where anybody can, if they had an experience, well, here, we're going to help you
go
tell
deeper
your family
into
about
it.
And learn more about it. Yeah.
People will message me, and, and rightfully so, I woke up and there was a little man in my room, and standing in the corner. What was it? I can tell you what it could have been, but you got to say, hey, what's your name? Like, you have to do that. You don't, and I know, my work is to let you know, like, hey, this stuff's possible. It may not be what you think it is. That little man, Christians are going to tell you it's a demon because you were scared. Does he talk about being scared of angels and their presence and their majesty and beauty, or how ugly they are? Either way.
So there's Swedenborg had a ton of fearful experiences, and I have a colleague named Dr. Jonathan Rose who's been translating Swedenborg's works, and he likes to say, like, for Swedenborg, every day was Halloween, because he was having constant, he would just wake up and write, and he kept this running journal throughout his whole,
like a Gothic, every day was Halloween. I'm joking.
Yeah. But it's like, because he would wake up and say, well, throughout the night there were evil spirits that were trying to kill me, but I knew that God was keeping me safe. He got to a point where he was protected and could see and observe what all these evil spirits were doing and the different ways that they were trying to enter into parts of his body and destroy him. But he would sort of laugh it off. Whereas earlier in his life, he was really scared of it because he didn't have that same level of protection. But also even experiences with having to confront his own negativity, which when angels approach, he would have to confront that. So that can be jarring. So there was a huge array of emotions that he was experiencing, and a lot of it was really intense. And you can kind of get glimpses of it because he'll write about it pretty detached and academically, but you can tell, oh, this was a really intense night that he went through here. So it's not all just like butterflies and simplicity, but he comes out of all that, forged into this state where he can really give you this really uplifting message.
That's so cool. One thing, I guess. So was he married? Did he have children? Is he? I'm studying the lives of the saints, and most of them were like devout. I'm going to live in a cave for 6 months, or I have taken a vow of celibacy so I can seek God. But a lot of a lot of the newer saints were like, hey, it's harder, but it's more commendable when you do have a wife and kids, and you can still tap in and be that person. Did he have a family and children?
So he didn't ever marry or have kids, but that wasn't a religious condition for him. He had someone earlier in his life. There's a few records that I think he was trying to propose to, but she wasn't into him. I think he just ended up consumed by work, but he actually wrote about that and said that it's actually important to be living a life in the world. That it's good to get married. It's good to have a family. You can't be spiritual without also being natural at the same time. So to him, it was, you're not supposed to live a spiritual life apart from the world. You're supposed to live it in the world. So the way that he did that was, even when he was having all these spiritual experiences, writing these books, he was still involved in government affairs and in one of the last things he ever wrote, even after having all these experiences and publishing all these books, was a treatise on trying to improve the currency in Sweden. So he was still trying to make society a better place, even though he was in all these levels of heaven and everything like that. So I think that he would say, no, like you actually, by for example, by having a wife and the love that you have to have in there and the spiritual growth you have to do, that actually you can grow more from that and be more of an image of God's love and wisdom there. And having children, you experience some of the love that God experiences. There's a great use in that. He says that creating more human beings is what God wants. So when you do it, that's good. Obviously, he was good not doing it. But the point I'm trying to make is he didn't say you're supposed to leave stuff behind. He didn't happen to get married and have a family, but it's not because that wouldn't have been as good. I think that you can do the spiritual life that looks like a regular person's life, no problem. It's really about what's going on inside you while you're doing it.
Awesome. You mentioned him having several pen names and things like that at certain points. Was his original name Emanuel Swedenborg, or did that come later? Because we know what the word. I say we know what the word means. I don't know if you want to break that down. But
so Emmanuel means God with us, and his name was always Emmanuel. Actually, his family's name used to be Svedberg when he was little, but they got ennobled partway through his life and became Swedenborg through that. So because he was some kind of low-ranking noble, and back when there was nobility and all that. So his name was always Emmanuel. His father actually was a bishop in the Lutheran Church. Jesper was his name. So he was very immersed in that world. So I think they would have given him the name Emmanuel with the religious idea in mind. But yeah, he had his switcheroo with his last name, which seems to happen to people.
And this doesn't have to be the end of the talk, but you would think a question like this comes at the end. Like, how did he die?
Sure. He died in his bed. He was in his 80s. I think it was 83, at a time when it was much more unusual to live that long. I think average life expectancy was in your 30s in Sweden, which didn't mean that nobody lived that old, but just that more people were dying young and everything. But there is pretty good documentation around him telling people, like there was somebody who said, "Hey, I'll see you next time you're in London," and he wrote back to them. They have the letters. He said, "No, I'm going to have moved on by then. Like I'm going to have died by then." And he had a caretaker who lived, or no, I think it was the person he was renting a room from. Um, and he told them, "Hey, I'm going to be dying on this date." And so he went in there and did it. And somebody asked him, "How are you feeling about that?" And he says, "I'm going to be free." So he
kind of knew it was coming.
He knew it was coming. I don't think we did some research into it. It didn't seem like he knew about it like a few years out, but as it was approaching, according to records, he very much knew, this is when I'm going to go, and this is the state I'm going to go in. And he says that's how it used to be for everyone. That back when the human race was in a state where we had open communication with heaven, and where we were living in what he calls in the divine design, like we were living a life of love to the neighbor and love of God, like God is trying to get us to do, that the spirit is very much open communication with heaven. You would and people would generally just die peacefully at an old age. There wasn't all the kinds of tragedies that happen now. So he died in a early sort of ideal way, but it's the way we're all meant to go, and hopefully the human race can get back there.
For sure. Who were some of his influences? Did he have certain saints or biblical characters that he referenced a lot that he looked up to, or even writers and things like that?
So prior to his theological phase, he was certainly a student of philosophy. So he was reading all of the Greek philosophers like Aristotle. He mentions, I was just reading something where he was talking about Cicero. He's actually talking about meeting Cicero in the afterlife and talking to him there. He's got a couple.
That's interesting. We didn't even talk about it. So he's meeting people who have already who lived once and have passed on.
Yeah, he actually has a pretty cool list of people. He talked to Martin Luther, like the Protestant Reformation guy. He has accounts of conversations with people in the afterlife. So a number of whom he had studied a lot. And you can see in his writings, he'll use terms that he got from those sorts of schools of philosophy. He doesn't have he says in the beginning that, or early on in his works, that he was forbidden to do too much studying of religious doctrine because that would color too much what he was saying. He was well versed in the Protestant doctrine of his time. As I said, his father was a bishop, and he knew things like the Athanasian Creed and those sorts of things inside and out. But he really came more from the scientific world. You see much more in his writings. His knowledge of anatomy comes up all the time. He'll constantly be making references to the way the human body works and how that mirrors spiritual processes, and also how, and this would be a whole nother conversation for another time, but how all people in the afterlife have a connection with a certain part of the human body, because the whole of heaven is organized like a human body, not in the same shape, like, I live like I will live out on the forearm, but functionally. So just like there's like the lungs do something for the body. Well, there are people who do something for heaven like that. They bring in ideas, just like the lungs bring in oxygen for the body.
You would bring that down to the church on the earth too, right? The body of Christ.
Absolutely,
and
the body of Christ.
Function.
That's what it's talking about, body of Christ. So his knowledge of anatomy, because he was one of the leading scientists in anatomy at the time, that came up all the time. His knowledge, even the styles of debate and writing that he would study would come up. He would write in what's called the geometric style, which was where you make a proposition and then you explain it, and then you explain the next part, and you explain the next part. So there's those influences. He knew, he actually went at the beginning of his theological phase, he taught himself Hebrew and Greek so that he could go and read the Bible in the original languages. He did a lot of biblical study then. He was familiar with it before, but made himself an expert in it. So there's a lot of influence there. And he references some famous religious figures, but doesn't have too much about any particular one that he really got influenced by.
No, none of the saints or anything like that.
I don't think so. He was Protestant, so I think at the time there was a pretty significant schism between Catholics and Protestants. There is now
at the time. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, it
but
was early on, right?
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was even more so than there is now, where you
Yeah.
just so he didn't have, I think a lot of the saints, that was the Catholic world, although he was getting to know it. But I think he certainly mentions a lot of angels that he was taught by, but he really ultimately says that what he wrote, it didn't come from anyone other than from God,
Yeah.
from Jesus, right? That
Um,
only the Lord through the Bible taught him what he wrote.
it's awesome. So talking about these angels, right? Meeting these angels, like, so are they mostly the iconic angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, or are there other beings or angels that come with a new name that we've maybe
Yeah.
never heard of, that he kind of introduces or something?
So Swedenborg has this interesting claim that, like, the angel Michael, when you hear about the angel Michael in the Bible, just like we were talking about with the different parts of the body, that's not necessarily referring to a single being, but it's a whole function of angels. So Michael, I believe, has to do with using truth to defend. So any angel who's doing that is like doing the Michael at the time. So there's all these different angels you may have heard of are these
Again,
different
the whole
functions.
channel, the spirit channeling through you,
Yeah,
because we're
right.
standing up for truth today,
Exactly.
and the spirit or the person who carries that essence is like, yeah, they got our message, and they are our
Yep.
mouthpiece right now on earth, whether they know it or
Exactly.
not. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly. So yeah, you can be today, you can go out and be a little part of Michael if the right inspiration strikes you there. So he talked about many angels, like individual angels of all kinds. And yeah, and so there's these big functions, but then it gets down to individual angels that you can meet and know and love.
Okay, so the big function would be like the title or the name of that, and so the personification where you can talk or interact with that
Yeah.
is looking at it as a physical representation. Most likely they don't look anything like, but it allows our imagination to have pictures of some of these beings or whatever, to connect. Because again, if you are operating as a defender of truth, you're in communion in a sense with this higher, maybe vibration, but an umbrella of those who stand up for truth. Um, and
Yeah. And you
it's
think
almost
about,
like
like, what's
iconography of even having a picture of Jesus, and most likely if something he didn't even look like anything like that, but it like helps you to, okay, I'm standing up for him. He is my Lord. He is my lover. It's like, hold on. Historically, he may have not looked anything like that, but it does something for us to be able to like have this image that we can connect with, if you will.
you have to have that. That's just the way that our minds work. If you He talks about that you can try to picture a god that doesn't have a human form, but you're never really going to be able to connect with that in the same way that you can connect with a picture of a human god. So I would say absolutely, whether or not if you have a picture on your wall of Jesus, whether that looks like Jesus physically looked or not, what that can do for you
Yeah.
is there's been times when then there's been movies like what was it, Bruce Almighty, remember with Jim Carrey? There's been
Mm-hmm.
like movies where they'll just have fleeting depictions of God. I'm thinking of one, yeah, a couple of times, and I remember just like it'd be some actor comes in and they act like they're God for a second, and it moves you. You're like, oh, to picture God as a person who can like make a joke or like put his arm around you or something. It just like you
Well,
connect with it.
if the I don't want to. This is deep, but even if the Bible is that. Those
Right.
stories are that. Like, okay, this king of so and so, and okay, look up his name because his name means something. Look up the city that they went into when Jesus goes into Capernaum to heal a man's vision. You got to understand what Capernaum is. You got to like all of those. Everything's in there for a reason. It's telling you a deeper story. At face value,
Yeah.
we're like, oh, he was so gracious on that man. The deeper part is like, hold on, that man is you. That man is you,
Dude.
that he wants to heal your vision. If you look into it deeper, and obviously the story, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Narnia, like
Yeah.
his name is not Aslan. Get it right. Listen, it's the same story. That if you have that connection, just a personification. The picture,
Yeah.
the names, those things change, but the story of like this, the God is passionately pursuing you, and he's a defender of the weak. And man, if you can embody and tell those stories, it's going to inspire you and move you to tears if you are able to read it. Not everybody can
Yeah.
read that. They only read that there was a lion named Aslan, that had his own story. But like, no, that's Jesus, man, the Lion of Judah. Make the connections, like it
Yeah.
opens it up for you.
Jesus
Story.
is always talking in parables. Like there's a sower sowing seeds, and the sower is God, but it's not Jesus. Is a sower. That's how Jesus talks. But what you were saying before about the meaning of the cities and where Jesus is going, you're going to love Swedenborg, because that's exactly, he calls that course. He says the whole word is written in correspondences, where each name, each action, each city applies directly to you, because God spoke the word, and anything that God says is universal and eternal. So it can't just be about something that happened a long time ago.
I'm
It's about,
kind of freaked out talking to you, man. Like,
yeah,
this is so
it's
weird.
about what happens right now for everyone, because that's where God is. So it's good, man.
I've been telling everybody that for it to be truth, it has to be real on every level of existence. It
Right.
has to be
Right.
your anatomy. It has to be in the heavens. It has to be in the spiritual world. And most people negate it and say it's only that. It has to be literal. Like it has to be all of those things for it to hold any truth. And so people would say, when you prove that the Bible is talking about astrology, oh man, I thought it was talking about my psyche. No, it's not only any of it. It is all of it. And that's what makes this thing come to life and be the greatest, book ever written, that knows it's alive. It's sharper than any two-edged sword. It knows everything about you, because God is using that as an instrument, to communicate his word, his vibration. And it's hidden. It has to be in a parable. And I love it that it is, because you have to come upon your own free will. You have to think about it. You have to meditate, because he's going to plant. He talked about the seed. He said the seeds is the word. God's word vibration, but also the words of Christ. I'm planting seeds. Now, the seeds can get choked out. You can dig the seeds up and throw them, or you can guard that seed and make sure that it gets water and sunlight and nutrients. And if you do that, then something's going to grow, the word. And so whether that's something beautiful or that's something negative, if you fight for that and let that thing grow, you're going to reap a harvest of some things that you planted 6 months ago. There's some seeds that take root overnight. There's gestation periods of 9 months that a seed of a woman, and the matrix, and which is the womb, any womb, the womb of a woman, the womb of the earth, the womb of creation. It has to be real on all of those levels. And man, to know that somebody else wrote this stuff, I feel like I've been reading. I haven't read his material, man, but I feel like I have been, just because everything that you're saying is stuff that the last 2 months have just been really deep in my spirit. And I've been studying in the Bible and have come to these, conclusions, so-called by myself. But I don't think it was by myself. I do think that we are being influenced by somebody's message who needs to be told at this time, if you will.
That's so cool. Well, I really appreciate getting to chat with you about all this stuff. It's been a ton of fun.
Before we go, your story, your encounters, your experiences. I know his story, speaks to you a lot, and it's helped your walk with God. But your walk with God, in that walk with God, are you experiencing any of this stuff? Are you getting voices or angels or downloads or demons? Are you having any of these stuff we'll call insane, if you will, some of the insane stuff that he experienced?
I certainly get what I feel like are downloads, meaning insights and clarity in places that I didn't have before, and times when these sorts of concepts will just hit me and just be so obviously true and alive. I haven't had overt experiences where I'm seeing and hearing things like we're talking about, but I've benefited a lot from people's descriptions of those. I sort of, through all of the material in Swedenborg, I've been able to get the understanding that comes with those sorts of experiences. And I've really, where I've sort of been specializing or focusing is, so how do I take all this really out there stuff and really put it into regular life? Like, how do I make it so that when I'm doing my dishes, I'm connecting to this spiritual stuff? I've had some, I've definitely had some times that were more intense where it's right on the edge, where I'm really feeling like really under attack by stuff and can really like hear like loud thoughts that are about it. So it's not been nothing, but I haven't had like a near death experience or something like that. So that's why I'm really grateful to people who are willing to share their stories about it. And I feel like the one of the main messages that Swedenborg had is like the spiritual world influences your psyche. I remember early on in our channel, I had these interviews with this guy who had been working with schizophrenics in prison and in hospitals, and the way that their voices were behaving is just like the way Swedenborg says evil spirits behave, which is just like the way my depressive thoughts were behaving. So by learning about somebody who's hearing voices, I learn about how to deal with my own anxiety and depression and that sort of stuff. So I feel like it's just a volume knob.
Yeah.
On everybody's experiencing this stuff all the time, but it's just quiet enough that it just in your regular, it feels like regular feelings and thoughts, even though it's spiritual influence.
Oh yeah, and that's so true. And so maybe some of this stuff have we over sensationalize it. Of I saw the being walk in my room and there was a fight around me, like. And a lot of my Christian friends are stepping away from the demon angel idea that it's only in your head and it is your psyche, but like we're describing the battle between two thoughts, like and that is a spiritual war that I believe is also taking place around you, and I think winning on any of those planes of existence is going to help you to win. You mentioned the psyche, you mentioned the demon, you mentioned your diet or your anatomy. I wanted to ask you if he spoke about diet too, but if winning on any of that can influence the other parts of you, of your body, your spirit body, your etheric body, your mental body. These are the different layers that we have. And astrology, all of that. Like everything you just said about how to help you with your thoughts and depression. I've got a friend who studies astrology, and instead of going to a therapist and being able to talk about it, he's able to do an astrology forecast and learn what the planets and stuff are going to be doing. And so know when it's a good time for him to keep to himself. Know when it's a good time to start a business venture. Know when it's when the season is right for him to step into that energy, if you will. And it's helped his psyche. It's helped his spiritual battle that goes on in his mind or around him. And so all of those levels, I think they are planes of existence, influence each other. And so to find which one you're able to articulate and see and work with, I don't think we should ever hold one higher than the other. Again, if the Bible is only literal, brother, you guys are lost. It's like, or we would say, no, all of this stuff is spiritual. It's only spiritual. And then my astrology friends, listen, brother, the Bible is pure astrology. I can prove it from Genesis to Revelation. It is astrology. But we fall into this temptation and error when we say it's only any of those things. And I think what makes it really beautiful is that it is, and we are all of those things.
That's very well said. Yep. We're integrated. God is present in all levels of creation, and it's those levels working together. Everything that's really got an image of the divine, and it has got a bunch of disparate parts working together that depend on each other. He talks all the time about the spiritual world, and even angels, they depend on the physical world and the people, just like a house depends on its foundation or your body depends on its feet. That's the way that God has made things. So it's not that there's one thing that's greater than everything else, but there's this community of service between all things. So I really like what you're saying about those levels.
Man, I'd like to have more info on the the upgrade he talked about in the spirit, and being able to know that his soul moved to a different region or place in the heavens, if you will. To be able to see that now, because what I've seen is all throughout the Bible, there's stuff about the coming judgments and the end of the world, and one day you're gonna give an account for every word you speak. It's like, okay, that's one day, but now I'm good. It's like, hold on, no, bring it. Maybe there is a one day when you get there and you're like, damn, I wish I wouldn't have said that, because now I get to see that I literally said this to a pure soul. So yeah, you're giving an account there, but now the words you speak, they come back to either haunt you or bless you. The deeds that you do in silence and in the seasons of how that comes to repay you, your words are seeds. And so, the Christian notion is that when you get to heaven, one day you're going to stand before the great throne of judgment and be judged for your actions. You know how to make that a good experience? To be judged for your actions right now. To lay there and ask God to show you, to try my heart, oh God, judge my heart, see if there be any wicked way in me, but really mean it and be open to it, because he's going to show you and you're going to see things. And it's that process, dude. I love it. Bringing it to the now moment. It is real. What makes it real is it's real for us today. It's real for us next week, next month, next year, into the ages to come. He said, behold, I'll be with you to the end of the age. Like, I'm with you in all of this stuff. Like, they weren't, going to be physical till the end of the ages, right? They didn't get to see that. And it makes it real, man. It makes all of this deep, far out stuff real. So I love it.
Sure.
And I appreciate you coming on, man, having this conversation and introducing me and my audience to the work of Emanuel Swedenborg and what he means to you. So let people know where they can go to follow your work. And so what do you do for the foundation? Do you do these talks? Do you make videos? A little bit of it all? Let people know where they can go to tap into that and how they can find your work.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed getting to talk with you, and I love the insights you were sharing. Yeah, I work at the Swedenborg Foundation, and I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. And we've got 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/offtheLeftEye, which that comes from an experience Swedenborg had where he was shown what it's like to transition to the spiritual world. It seemed like a covering was peeled off his left eye, which gave him the use of spiritual sight, because the left is the intellectual side. But there's any question you might have, we've got a treatise on it from Swedenborg's perspective. So you can go there. You can go to swedenborg.com if you're looking at. We make all his books available as free downloads, so you can go there and get the PDFs and everything like that. If you go to those places, you'll find it. And if you want to get in touch with us, just like leave a comment on any video or on the website, and somebody will get to you and talk with you, because as you can tell, this is what I love to talk about and do. So I'm just appreciate getting to spend some time here with you and your audience talking about what I love to talk about.
Hey, I enjoyed it so much. I really did. I'm a student of this stuff, man, and this makes the best episodes, because there's those episodes just like, oh, another psychic, another this, another story. But it's like, when I'm hungry and I'm there, that's where I am. Listen, I'm asking questions because I want to know. And obviously the people who are still listening, they want to know too. So that's what's up. Appreciate
Good
you,
on
man.
You, man. It's 2 hours in. Cool. Good.
Yes,
well, thank you so much. Really, really, really had fun.
We'll have to do it again, man. I'm open to come on, because I know his story and his stuff. And maybe if you find some stuff that you think may be of interest to me and my audience, we'll come on and something that we didn't talk about, which I know there's much, right? I think we didn't even begin to scratch the surface of how this stuff works. And I'm dedicated, and I know my audience is too. Appreciate you, Curtis. Thanks so much, bro.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Again. Peace. Wow, guys, such a good talk. I know that you guys were blessed. I'm still in awe. I am still just enamored of all the synchronicities. Synchronicity. God is listening. Angels speak to me. 3 and 33. Yeah, listen, man, God is so amazing and intricate in the way this stuff works. And we've been told so much by the church, at least me, or other people. It's like, you'll find out when you die. Just don't worry about that. Listen, keep it simple, man. Don't overcomplicate the grace of God. Keep it simple. And yeah, the grace and the love and the mercy is simple, but what that mercy and what that grace does for your spirit, man, listen, that is, my goodness. You take a whole, not just one lifetime, but many to understand and to study and to get lost in it, and then to get found, and then to get lost again, and it'll go down a rabbit trail and come back. And man, this is the reason we're here, is to explore the depths of who God is and how he operates. And you'll find out, I mean, in this talk it's not just God from his throne as the king. Bless them. Give them a blessing that they can't contain. And God does pour out those blessings, but he has laws and statutes and structures and judges and princes and officers and magistrates and lesser judges that judge under him, and how that works. Listen, man, this is all in the Bible. All of it's in there. This is all in your body and your anatomy. All of it's in there. When you understand this, then you'll get a greater love for the scriptures, for the Bible, and for the Word of God. Because you know that you reading that book is as you're gazing into a mirror, and you're looking into your own eyes and into your own soul, into your own spiritual evolution, your own psyche, your own spiritual warfare, as the Israelites are fighting the Amalekites, and how they overcame and how they won. And what is an Amalekite? Look up the word. Look up the weapons that they used. And then go read about the spiritual armor and the weapons and what that weapon represents in the spirit. And man, listen, this is unfolding to get the beauty, to be enamored with the things of God and how he operates, versus being enamored with the things of the world, which we once were, and we're still parts of us that are, to let that stuff go and want to be channels for the Most High God. We want to be channels for the beautiful energy and expression of Christ. How do you become a channel? That's weird language. You open up your heart and bring more light in. That is simply spending time with God, emptying out yourself. When he shows you something that you need to let go of, when he shows you something to say or something to do, it's going to be for your greater good, to do it as quick as you can. Your evolutionary process, bringing light into your life and bringing light into your heart. I'm on fire for this stuff. Once again, and I know that, and many of you know that. That's why you're listening. But listen, it doesn't stop there, because my prayer, my cry, is how do I stay on fire? Listen, one day I feel it, the next day I don't. It just is what it is. How do I stay in that place of intimacy? How do I keep my flame burning? How do I keep oil in my lamp? As the virgins in the scriptures, the analogy of them bringing oil to the lamp and keeping it in there. How do we keep oil in our lamps? How do we stay passionate and madly in love with Christ? How do we keep the main thing the main thing? Man, this is my prayer, and I want to know. And I want to lay down my idols. I want to lay down my character flaws that don't honor Christ, that don't honor God. And as I do that, I know that he brings rewards. I know that he's like, I can trust him. Angels of mercy, bring him this encounter. Angels of light, fly by his home and let him see you outside of his window. I mean, this is why we're here, man, to be in the beauty and enamored with God and in all of his aspects of what he does. We are the body. Everybody doesn't have to be into that, to be a Christian or to be deep. No, this is too deep for many people. It's not their calling. They're not a hand. They can't dribble the ball. They may be a foot. They may have to wear the shoe and carry us as we play the sport. When the body comes together and we honor one another and walk in love despite our differences. What is the similarities? Again, that we're all connected to that same body. The hand cannot say to the foot, there is no need of you. Be gone. We don't need to study Emanuel Swedenborg. We need to study Jesus. No, sir. You don't need to study Emanuel Swedenborg. You don't need to. We just need to keep it simple, brother. No, you need to keep it simple. That's not how my mind works. My mind is after the depths of things. You know where that led me early on? In the satanic cults and witchcraft and demonic stuff. Because nobody in the church could keep my attention, could honor and see the awe and the wonder and the imagination that comes from God. To cultivate that and to use that. Come on, people, this is what we are doing. This is resonance, and I'm getting chills speaking to that, because that's your story, man. It's what I went through. It's what you went through. It's what you're going through. I see it. I honor it. Come to the table. Have a seat at the table. If they're not attacking us, if they're not, they may be speaking the same word, but the fruit is the same. Should we stop them? He's teaching people that angels ascend every night upon the Son of Man. Listen, Jesus told Nathaniel and other people that, listen, after this, you fixing to see the angels of God, the judges, the magistrates of God, ascending and descending upon the Son of Man, bringing gifts, loosing judgments. You say it is God that does it, for sure. But God doesn't get off of his throne and come down there and handle you. No, he has an amazing providence, kingdom, judicial system set up where it runs itself. Any good business that is set up, it's set up good enough to let it run itself. And the king can do what kings do. Rule and reign and enjoy their kingdom. The king doesn't have to go and talk to the people on the ground level. Like, they do it from time to time. But he'll send somebody in his name. He'll send an ambassador in his name. Hence who Jesus Christ was. An ambassador. I'm going to send my son in the likeness of flesh to show you guys that you can do it, that you're enough. Trust and believe in what he did. Follow his examples. When he speaks, I speak. When an ambassador comes to another land, they speak on his behalf. We are ambassadors for the kingdom of God. It's who he was. It is who you are. Ambassadors for his kingdom, if you'll speak the words, open your mouth, and be that mouthpiece, be that instrument. We are God's workmanship on the earth, that he can work and move things around and use us because he can trust us and we're obedient. Listen, that's what it's about. And that interests me. The intricacies of how it works. Listen, if it doesn't interest you, fine. Like, you have something to offer too. You may be good at something. You may be good at editing videos, and that's how you serve the kingdom. It doesn't have to be like, I'm not here for to get you to intellectually wrap your mind around something. What's understood doesn't have to be explained. Most of what the brother was sharing today, man, I already knew. But it's good to hear it articulated because it bears witness. And you find out, and I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but you'll find out that when we share these concepts, you already knew it too. You just never heard nobody vocalize it. You just never heard nobody share it. And when they do, or when we do, there's resonance. It's like, oh wow, he's saying what I believe. I knew the third eye wasn't a bad thing. I knew that Christ consciousness wasn't bad. I knew that was simply having the mind of Christ. They demystified it for me. So now I can step into that consciousness, is to have the mind of Christ in every situation, every matter. I can look for his mind. I can look for his opinion. We don't compartmentalize. God doesn't compartmentalize. Ain't just pieces of you that he can have and the other pieces he can't. You got to give your whole self. You have to be a living sacrifice, acceptable and pleasing unto God. This is our journey, and it's the greatest journey ever. Keep that fire burning, my friend. We need each other for that. To fan the flame, the things of God that are in each other. To see the potential. To see the concern. But there's a way to do it. Like, concern is good. Like, hold on, man. Don't put your hand in that fire. You're going to get burned. But there's a way to do it. I'm not going to cut my hand off or hit it with a bat. First of all, I'm going to tell myself in my body and say, okay, don't do it, man. Remember we did it last time? Yeah, we did. I'm not going to cut my hand or stab it so it doesn't go in the fire. That's strange, but that's what the body of Christ, so-called, is doing on the earth, at least who the people we're calling the church. Because they disagree with you, so they attack you, which is not of God. The body, that's a cancer. When the body attacks itself, and the cells fight each other, and formulates a cancer in the body, because you're fighting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. We're to work together. There's a way that you talk to people. There's a way that you talk about deep subjects. There's a way that you correct people. And the Bible will tell you how to do it. And it's in love. What is that love? It is in compassion. Many people have that compassion, but it doesn't come across. They are zealous. They have a zeal for what they believe, and the zeal for not wanting you to get hurt. But that zeal is without knowledge. They don't know how. Why? Because they've never had nobody correct them in love. All of their correction has been a blog against them, or you write a blog against me, or yelling, or stay away from TruthSeekah, he's deceived. That's your correction? If I'm influencing as many people as I am, or at least how many you think I am, shouldn't we sit down and have a talk? And maybe there's a better way of doing it. If the old way is not working, stop doing it. If it ain't working, stop doing it. And if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Truly carry God's heart and his burden. This is our prayer. And it opens up so much. Whatever the desires of your heart is, the more we're in his presence, the more we're in his word, the more we submit, our desires change. I don't desire the things that I used to desire. And there's things that my flesh desires that I would like to have the opportunity to lay down, so that I won't desire it, so that I can starve it out, that I can give it to God, so that he can replace it with a corresponding attribute that is good, that is useful, that is fruitful. So as we submit these desires before God and before the fire, it's given back to you, purified. And what's not supposed to be there gets burnt off. And we add that gold brick to the New Jerusalem, which is your body, which is the temple of God. And Christ is the foundation. You put that on top of the foundation of Christ, and it is eternal. Fire cannot burn it up. It is not corruptible. It is your foundation. It is another brick in the temple of who you are. It is that desire, giving it to him, let him purify it and give it back. So that's what happens. That's the purification process that we're all undergoing to become a temple for God, to house more of his presence on the earth, more of his love. There is more. That's this process that's going on. The alchemical spiritual process. You're transforming. You are morphing. There's a metamorphosis. I love that word. When the Bible says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that instantly you will be transformed. It says there will be a metamorphosis. You will morph. You are morphing into the image of Christ, the image of light, the image of love. And where you go, there is no darkness, because you are light. Submitting your desires that aren't good. They're hurting you. That's what sin is. To miss the mark. The things that are killing you, give them up. Stop doing it. Our prayer is, God, help us to do it. God, reveal it. again, we talk about insanity. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over, expecting different results. That you can keep being rude, church people. You can keep leaving mean comments on people's page that you don't agree with. And it never has worked. But you think if you keep doing it, eventually it's going to work. Come on, man. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Lay your life down on the altar. Allow those things that are killing you, that aren't working, to be taken from you. Give it up as an offering. Give it to the Lord. That's worship. That's true worship. Take it. I don't want it no more, God. I give it to you. Even the things you do want. Again, they're not wanting it. Listen, identify it. Get in your prayer closet and say, Lord, I really like this. Be honest with yourself and be honest with God. Lord, I really like this, but I know it's not good for me. I know that I abuse those things. I know that I can't, I can't show self-control on these areas. So even though I like them, I'm giving it up to you. I'm telling you what, you're talking about, and that's if it's bad. I'm not saying a Gnostic belief of something that brings you pleasure. You just want to get rid of things that bring you pleasure. But what kind of pleasure is it bringing you? You know, is it fleshly pleasure? Is it gorging yourself pleasure that it's not healthy? If it's not healthy, get rid of it. Repent, which is to have a different mindset to turn from it. Because you'll find out that as you submit to that process and as you lay those things down, your desires begin to transform. You don't desire the things that you used to desire. Now you desire more of His presence. Now you desire cool spiritual stuff, spiritual gifts. You desire to be used. You desire to love greater. I mean, whatever it is, but it begins to be transformed. There's corresponding with the things that you used to desire. You know, when it comes to alcohol, I remember my prayer was and is, Lord, let me desire to be drunk on you. Like my flesh likes the sedation and to be, a sense of bliss, but like it's not good. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your spirit. So to be drunk on Christ, to be drunk on love, to be love drunk, truly, madly, deeply. God, make that the desire of my heart. And that's a good desire. And listen, we desire to be drunk, but not on meats and wines. We're not drunk with wine as you suppose. There's the correlation. It looked like you guys were drunk on wine. Why? Because you're merry, you're jolly, you're laughing, you're in bliss. Come on, man. You guys should be afraid right now. I turn on the news. My wife watches the news in the morning. She says she just wants to watch the weather. And I had the news on it. I mean, it was murder, death, kill. Murder, death, kill. MDK, MDK, MDK. Story after story. You got to turn this off. You got to turn this off. It's a reason. COVID is this. This many people's died. It's coming back. Watch out. We're coming. Turn that off. You got to turn that off. And I wonder why I'm walking around with anxiety. Because I'm entertaining this stuff and it's becoming truth. Repetition reduces resistance. The more that you hear something over and over, the more you let down your guard to start believing it. Even in your mind, psychologically. There's music that you're listening to. Repetition reduces resistance. You got to reprove and you got to restore and you got to repent and you got to repair. All of that. You ask for help. The ministering spirits that are here to help and to minister to those, the angels, are here to help those who are to inherit eternal life, is what the Bible says. Allow them to be at work. Allow them to bring conviction. Allow them to open up doors that whatever it is you need to walk to. But as this process unfolds, your desires change. And the scripture says that I will give you, this is the Lord speaking, I will give you, it says, delight yourselves in me, and I will give you the desires of your heart. So delighting in Him, to delight ourselves in the Lord, is to walk in the Spirit, is to really find delight in Him, in His kingdom, to be infatuated with Him. Listen, I used to be infatuated with all kinds of things that weren't of God or negative, or how I can hurt somebody, how I can steal, how much money I can steal out of a house, or how I can break in a house, or, just all kinds of things just in the world. Like I was infatuated with taking myself out. I used to dream about that. Like I didn't like myself and I was infatuated. I delighted in that stuff. It's like, it brought me like some weird comfort. But if delight yourself in the Lord, delight yourself in Him, because in that delighting, you're being changed. You're being renewed by His grace and by His presence. You're giving up the things that are killing you. You're repenting, and He's literally taking it out of you and replacing it with something beautiful. His Holy Spirit. When the scripture talks about that when an evil spirit is cast out of a person, it goes into dry places and it waits a while, and then it comes back with 7 stronger spirits other than itself. It's like the mafia. If somebody couldn't take you on, listen, we got to go get backup. We got to go get help. And they come, who can't, why did they kick you out? Why are you roaming around in dry places? Well, they kicked us out. Well, let's go back, because they can't take us all. And those spirits come back to that home to take up residence again. So you have to be swept clean, and you have to replace that house that they had, which is you. You are a house of spirits, or the Spirit. He says, I will not share my glory with another. I cannot share a bed with Baal. I'm not going to do that. You're either a house of God or a house for spirits. So when those spirits come back, they find your home, their old home. They used to have a legal contract to be there. They were there for legal reasons, legal purposes. You gave them a certificate of divorce and you cast them out. Get out of here. That's what that word means. Cast them out. And then they come back with stronger. Hold on, wait. Why did you kick these guys out? We're coming back and we're gonna, we're taking over. But if your house and your home and your heart is swept clean and filled with the Spirit, they don't have a home to come back to, and they got to keep it moving. But if you don't, those spirits come back with stronger entities, stronger addictions, worse consequences. And the scripture says that the state of that person is worse than before. That you shouldn't even kicked it out. You should have just found contentment with that demon in you, because you wasn't ready to clean the house once it left. You seemed like you're ready. Your spirit was willing, but your flesh was weak. You wasn't ready to give this stuff up. You asked for the man to pray and to remove a spirit of pornography off of you, and he does, and you find a release, and you felt that spirit leave. Your spirit wanted it, but your flesh was weak. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so ask God, ask for help, ask for His mind, ask for His heart. Seek and you'll find whatever it is that you're looking for. Be committed to the process. Delight yourself in Him. He will give you the desires of your heart. Your desires change. The things that you used to desire, you don't desire no more. You desire Him. You desire hope. You desire to help. Hey, I'm just trying to help. That's your desire. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to let you help. It's like somebody playing football on a football team, and you got somebody who's not that good, and they don't get to play, but they're standing by coach. Come on, coach, put me in. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. Listen, okay, you can go because you're ready, because you want it. I'm going to put you in. I need you to go here and do that. Go here, set that block, do this, help the team. Because you want to be used. I remember early on, I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to play Christian rock music, Christian metal music. And a friend of mine, they had a band. It was called A Perfect World. And we started hanging out with them a lot. And I just wanted to do something in the band. He was like, you should learn to play bass. And if you can play bass, then you can play in the band with us. Okay, cool. I bought a bass. And I started playing it and I sucked at it. Like I barely could play it. Like they had to show me what to play. But if he showed me, I could just remember it, write it down, and practice and play what he showed me. And he had to work with me, and it took a long time. And they replaced the guy that was in the band with me. And the guy that was in the band was actually really good. He played whatever. Like, guy was really good. And I was blown away. I'm like, man, why would you kick him out and put me in the band? He's like, because you want it. You want it. He's just here. He doesn't care about this. It's just old to him. He doesn't care. So I'm going to put you in the game. I need you to play bass. I'm going to teach you. Why? Because you're willing to learn. You're apt to learn. And so that touched me when that happened, you know, and I keep that with me. And I think that's how God operates. That he's looking for people that he can use. He's looking for people that he can trust, who really want it, who are in it for the right reasons. You know, most of the gatekeepers, most of the people in the clergy and people who are pastors or people who have been in any of this stuff, really, any levels for a long time, they've kind of lost their passion. It's their job now. I've been there. I can go from there to being on fire and the next day. You know, so the goal is to stay in that place. And just because those gatekeepers are there, don't mean that they deserve to be there any longer. And if they don't let you in, God will be the one to take them down because of their pride and open the door and give you their throne, to give you that seat. Your time is coming. God is a rewarder to those and of those that diligently seek him. Don't worry about if nobody notices you. God notices you. Acts chapter 10. God dealing with Cornelius, who was a Gentile, who was giving God everything that he owned, all of his thoughts, his heart, his mind. But the Israelites were like, nah, we don't deal with Gentiles. They are unclean. And the Old Testament tells us to stay away from these people, you know, and God gives Peter a vision. And it's signs and symbols that he had to interpret, and he had to wrestle with it. Lord, what do you mean? What do you mean? This dream doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Keep wrestling with it, Peter, because you're going to see what it means. The next day he runs into Cornelius, a man who was devout in all of his ways, that he was so devout that his aura, that his essence, his incense reached heaven, and God noticed, hey, who's that guy? Have you heard of him? He's a Gentile. Okay, we got to use him. Why? Because he's apt to be used. Peter has that dream and goes into the city that Cornelius was staying at, and he meets Cornelius, and God speaks to Cornelius, hey, go up, there's going to be a man who you're going to meet. Go look for him. When you see him, you'll know, and he'll know you. What is that? That's a weird dream. God's dealing with both people. We're talking about synchronicity. We're talking about synchronicity. Dealing with two different people, and then when they see each other, they find resonance. Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy from my dream. That's the guy who just spoke everything that I've been studying for the last 3 months. Synchronous. Somebody orchestrated this. This isn't by chance, but God. Peter sees him and now gets the interpretation of his dream. Because in his dream, it was a shawl that comes down full of unclean animals. Peter, being a Jew, has never eaten anything unclean. He sees the vision and it's full of unclean animals. And he says, Peter, take and eat. Take and eat. And Peter's like, what? It's a nightmare. I'm not, Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean. I've never eaten any. What do you mean, Lord? He's like, you'll see what I mean. Goes to the next city, looks at this guy who says, hey, God told me I'm supposed to come to you. And then boom, 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 synapses connect. He says, wow, the meaning of my dream had nothing to do with animals or eating anything. He says, I knew the reason of my dream, and the interpretation it was not to call any man unclean. So he got it through a dream and through a vision where God was able to change his mind and to deal with even Peter, who was hard-hearted and had false beliefs about people, calling people that God created, that God loves, unclean. Lord, how are you worshiping this? How is this man worshiping you? How are you using this man? He's not a Christian. He's not one of us. All right, listen. You'll see. And it's the same message God is speaking now. You think that we would get it. But we're real possessive. You can't. You cannot be a part of my church. You scatter. You don't teach the things that we teach. You have a different belief, and now you're my enemy. No, listen, am I your enemy because I tell you the truth? What's your wording? We don't use those words here. Well, don't. We do, where I'm from. My people, they use those words. They get them. Those words are interchangeable, sir. Those words are interchangeable. I love all words. We're a student of the word. The people change, the phrases change, the terms change, but the meaning stays the same. Everything else is recycled. Hope you get that. Thank you guys for hanging out. This was a really good episode. All right, let's get down to business. I have to say a huge thank you to some of the latest patrons within the last week or so. I'm gonna give a shout out and say thank you to Rhonda Edwards. Thank you for coming on, Rhonda, and for supporting. It means the world. Shout out to Adam Kincaid. Thank you for coming on, Adam. It means the world. Thank you for being a part of the community and believing in my work. It means the world. Thank you. Christina Collis, thank you, Christina. So good to connect with you and your husband. And I'm praying for you guys, praying for your husband, and hope that you guys encounter new realms of the beauty and bliss of God in your life. If you'd like to support, go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah or TruthSeekah.com. There, by joining, you get access to my entire discography of music. You get access to the Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is our community aspect to what we build here, and hanging out and discussion and prayer and meditation, all that good stuff. Listen, sometimes we just need people to talk to and roll ideas off of each other, just because there's nobody at your job that you can talk to about opening a chakra or how to commune with an angel or whatever it is, or sigils or gazing into icon. I don't care what it is. We're open, man. We're open. That's what we do. So if you're looking for that community, make sure you join through Patreon. So that's on Thursday nights. Also Sunday mornings we connect. We do breath work, a lot of discussion, but prayer and meditation as well. Really trying to find that first day of the week that we can get together and come together and pray and submit things to God and just allow His presence and His beauty to wash over us and to lift up God and just say thank you together. And that really shifts your vision for that whole week. So we do that on Sunday mornings as well. You also get access to the entire meditation library that I have. It's available there. Check out all my meditations. Also, the entire library of webinars that we did with the Mystic Circle. There's so many A-list people in the spiritual community, people that I believe in, people whose work has impacted my life in some way. And so we discussed it all. And so those webinars are there that we've done last year. We're going to be doing more, so you get access to all of that stuff. Make sure you go and check it out. It is the membership. It is how you partner with me and allow me to keep doing what I'm doing at this level. Thank you guys for being a part of this community and showing up. Listen, every share, every like, every comment, every prayer, it means the world to me. I can feel your prayers. I feel your energy. I see your comments. We don't have a huge team. We need each other. Thank you for believing in this work and believing in this message. And I know that you understand the severity of this word that needs to go out to the masses, to walk in love, to walk in peace, and bidding people to come together, to put put aside our differences. Do we have them? Yeah. Why get caught up in what separates us? That's what the Pharisees did. The word Pharisee means separatist. To you today, was a devout sect of Jewish scholars and Jewish leaders, but they were separatists. They looked for ways to disqualify people. No, your hair's too long. Oh, those rings, he's tattoos. If you remove your tattoos, you can come speak at our church. Namaste. Love you guys. We're gonna do it again. Many blessings. Shalom and shalom.
Your will so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.